Chapter 113. Since more than 8 months ago when Wen Bao was deceived by Wang Lu from the Spirit Creek town, he had been swindled one after another. For example, when the sect was first established, even the dirty old man, that wastewood, was given the title of Deputy Director of the Intelligence Revenue Service. However, he could only be a glorious worker of the Intelligence Revenue Service, commonly known as the Strong Man. All day long he was responsible for digging pits and building houses everywhere. Later, when the Wisdom sect expanded, he became the head of the Infrastructure Department, but his job was still the same, digging pits and building houses, carrying out large-scale construction. Of course, Wen Bao was also clear that Wang Lu had given him the core work of the sect. In the past 6 months, the Wisdom sect had amassed a lot of money, but they also spent it like water. Except for a small part of it, which was used to purchase 6 Harmonies powder, spirit root cultivation technique and other things, most of it was used for infrastructure. In the past, the construction of the Wang family village surprised the 7 Stars Division's head, Yi Chuchen. However, until now, the number of villages like the Wang family village in the Wisdom sect's parish had already reached 2 digits. These villages were rich in spiritual energy, thus, it was only natural that they built altars, which allowed the Wisdom sect to evolve from a dual mineral stream to a chaotic mineral stream. The construction of these villages, Wang Lu didn't personally do it. The sect spent a huge amount of money to buy materials, and then mobilized the followers to exchange the heaven-burning blood technique for cultivation base and improve the labor force. Wen Bao, as the head of the infrastructure department, played a key role in this. These villages with altars were the core areas of the Wisdom sect. In addition, according to the characteristics of each area such as medicine fields, farms, smelting plants, alchemy rooms, and other such facilities were innumerable. Although the grade was not high, they were practical. Wen Bao, as the direct person in charge of the infrastructure department, worked day and night for these projects. After more than half a year, his whole body had gained a circle of fat. Of course, it was not because he was lazy, but because Wen Bao's cultivation base had gone up another level. Now he was about to break through to the 6th level of the Qi cultivating stage, entering the ranks of the middle level. This kind of progress, compared to Wen Bao's earthly spiritual route, was actually not surprising. However, considering the relatively conservative education policy of Lingjian School, and the general situation of the disciples' realm was not high, this speed was really shocking. Senior brother Yu Yun, who led the team to the small clear sky peak to gain experience, was only at the 6th level of Qi cultivating stage after 4 years. This kind of progress was naturally inseparable from the past 6 months of hard work. The Wisdom sect's infrastructure work wasn't simply a silly effort. Any work required exquisite control of spiritual energy and force. Wen Bao was originally not good at these things, but after half a year of work, Wen Bao felt that his primordial spirit had stabilized a lot, and he could use his power more meticulously. Then, the cultivation barrier of the Qi cultivation stage was crossed just like that. The improvement in his cultivation made Wen Bao deeply realize that following Wang Lu down the mountain was the right choice. That sharp-tongued senior brother had always treated his own people well, but, when it was time to trick his father, he never showed mercy. This diplomatic emissary job could be given to anyone, but why did he give it to him who was not good with words? Could it be that this was some kind of magical prank program? When he was stuttering in the great Ming country's mansion of light, suddenly a few people jumped out and shouted, "You've been pranked?" Thinking about it, looking at the diplomatic letter written by Wang Lu in his hand, Wen Bao could only sigh. He knew that he had no other choice, so he braced himself to do it. From the Wisdom sect's Wang family village to the great Ming country's capital, even with the speed of a cultivator, it would take at least 3 to 5 days. Wen Bao called his 2 right-hand men from the infrastructure department, packed up their luggage and set off on the road. 3 days later, the 3 of them arrived at the great Ming country's Kaiping prefecture. As soon as they entered the city, one of the assistants next to them sighed with emotion. "If we can build an altar here and absorb believers, how cool would that be?" Upon hearing this, the originally nervous Wen Bao burst into laughter. "Little Yang, you're quite ambitious." The assistant, Yang Xiao, explained, "This Kaiping prefecture city is much more prosperous than our Eastern Wei prefecture city. The number of shops on this street alone is more than the entire Eastern Wei prefecture city." The other assistant, Guohong, nodded his head and added, "It is said that this Kaiping prefecture city has a population of more than 1 million, 10 times more than the Eastern Wei prefecture city. Moreover, this place is a real feng shui treasure land. The surrounding spiritual energy within the radius of thousands of miles is gathered here. I think it's a bit stronger than our Wisdom sect's headquarters. If we can move the primal chaos altar here, how cool would that be?" Wen Bao nodded his head. It's really cool, but unfortunately it's not realistic. Although the Great Ming country is not a high-rank country, it's impossible for them to let us occupy its capital. Yang Xiao was somewhat unconvinced. Sect leader once said, "A single spark can start a prairie fire." Although our wisdom sect has just developed, and our strength is not very strong, sooner or later, it will spread throughout the 9 regions. This Great Ming country's capital is nothing. Wen Bao choked for a moment, but he wasn't annoyed. He just sighed inwardly at his senior brother's brainwashing skill. This Yang Xiao and Guohong were originally cultivators of the 7 Stars sect, so they were not the same as the common fools. However, after joining the wisdom sect for just a few months, they were even more fanatical than the common fools. Every day they would shout that they wanted to be one of the millions of pioneers. Their work enthusiasm was so high that it made him, as their leader, feel ashamed of his inferiority. Okay, let's go to the Mansion of Light first and hand over the introduction letter. The so-called Mansion of Light was an institution that was specifically set up by the Great Ming country to deal with matters related to the immortal cultivation world. Its function seemed to overlap with the Wanxian League's Hall of Mortal Reason, but that was not the case. The Wanxian League's Hall of Mortal Reason was more of a violent department, dealing with the problems that the mortal world's government couldn't deal with. As for the normal interaction between the immortal cultivation world and the mortal world, it was usually settled by the government's own rules. And the Great Ming country's Mansion of Light was responsible for such a responsibility. The group of 3 people walked for a moment in the city and arrived in front of the Mansion of Light. This institution that communicated between the mortal world and the immortal cultivation world was located in the center of the Kaiping Prefecture city, next to the Imperial City. Its special geographical location showed its superior status. Even the guards at the gate had a trace of arrogance on their faces. When Wen Bao came forward to show his identity as a cultivator and hand over the introduction letter, the other party ignored him. Wen Bao was a simple and honest person, so he didn't mind. After handing over the introduction letter, he turned around and left, waiting for the Mansion of Light to contact him. But the 2 assistants were angry in their hearts. "Why are you so arrogant? Isn't he just a small fry?" "That's right, a mere mortal actually dares to show us face." Wen Bao bitterly smiled. Although he's a mortal, he's still a mortal of the Mansion of Light. The Great Ming country is not a first-class country, but there are many cultivators from the Wanxian League in its territory. They usually come in contact with high-end people, so naturally they look down on us country bumpkins. Speaking to this, a thought flashed through the fatty's mind. He actually guessed the reason why Wang Lu appointed him as the diplomatic envoy. With the current development of the wisdom sect, it was still far from being able to run amok in the Great Ming country. Even though they had a lot of followers and astonishing wealth, they still couldn't break away from the low-end development pattern. Currently, the highest cultivation base in the sect was still Yi Chuchen, who was in the Shudan stage. In other words, as long as there were a few Taoist Master King Pill, they could make the wisdom sect collapse. Therefore, this visit to the Mansion of Light was obviously to pretend to be a grandson, and no one else was more professional than Wen Bao in this task. Thinking to this, Wen Bao actually felt relieved. Since his senior brother personally appointed him to pretend to be a grandson, then he only needed to do his job well. In any case, the specific negotiation content had already been written by Wang Lu in the diplomatic letter. When the time came, he just needed to hand it over to the person in charge of the Mansion of Light, waiting for the other party to deal with it. Therefore, while appeasing his 2 indignant assistants, Wen Bao found an inn in the opening Peace Prefecture to stay, and then calmly waited for the contact from the Mansion of Light. This was also the sorrow of a small sect. If it were the cultivators from the Wanxian League, they wouldn't need to go through so much trouble. They could just directly go to the door and talk to the person in charge. The development of the wisdom sect was still a long way to go. When Bao calmed his mind and patiently waited for the reply from the Mansion of Light. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. On the 4th day, not to mention the 2 assistants who were already fuming with anger, even when Bao couldn't sit still. An entire 3 days. Wasn't it just a letter of introduction? There were only a few hundred words in total. It was just a letter of introduction explaining their identity and background and requesting to have a dialogue with the Mansion of Light. Was it that difficult to deal with? It wasn't written in Western continent language. It was clear that they looked down on him and didn't attach any importance to him. Although he had long been prepared to pretend to be a grandson, being treated with such a noble and elegant manner, Wen Bao's heart still felt aggrieved. Elder Wen, are we going to continue to wait? The 2 assistants' hearts were naturally doubly aggrieved. In the Wang family village and other places as the backbone of the sect, they were worshipped by countless believers. However, in the opening Peace Prefecture, they didn't even have the qualification to pretend to be a grandson. Wen Bao thought for a moment. Actually, with his temper he didn't mind waiting. However, if that letter of introduction was really shelved like a stone sinking into the sea, then this diplomatic mission would be a failure. Very well, let's go and ask again. Thus, the three of them once again went to the Mansion of Light. Along the way, the two assistants constantly fanned the flames of their superior. Finally, they fooled Wen Bao into a murderous look, as if he would kill himself if he didn't see the person in charge. As a result, when they arrived at the entrance of the Mansion of Light, they saw a person who looked like a steward was sternly admonishing them. You two cheer up. When the immortal teacher comes to visit, don't make any mistakes, otherwise I'll peel your skin, do you understand? The two guards trembled in fear as they complied. Not far away, Wen Bao and his assistants looked at each other in dismay. Yang Xiao asked, Immortal teacher? Are you talking about us? Wen Bao laughed in spite of himself. How is that possible? In any case, this is the capital of a country. If he wants to be an immortal teacher here, he should at least be a Taoist Master King Pil. Guohong also said, if he really attaches so much importance to this place, how could he leave us alone in these past few days? I think it's most likely because of this immortal teacher's visit that they don't even know what to do. Guohong's heart was filled with indignation, and his voice was a bit louder. Wen Bao quickly pulled him back, but unfortunately the steward at the door still heard him. Fortunately, at this time there was an urgent matter. The steward turned his head and glared at the three of them. He was not in the mood to pursue these several inexplicable people, and began to admonish the two guards about various details. This time, the Mansion of Light attached particular importance to the immortal teacher's visit, and they were particularly particular about the tedious formalities. However, without waiting for the steward to finish nagging, he saw a person hurriedly run over and whisper a few words in his ear. The steward's complexion greatly changed. With a fierce look, he warned the two guards again and then respectfully stood by the door. Not long after, in the distance, the sound of people bustling could be heard. A large group of people surrounded two young people quickly walked over. From their clothes, it could be seen that they were all high-ranking officials of the great Ming country. Usually, when these nobles went out, they would be accompanied by a group of people, and idlers would avoid them. But at this time they all put on a smiling face and followed the two people in the middle. They were sweating profusely and their image was completely ruined. Guohong was somewhat unconvinced. I don't think those two people are anything special. They are only qi cultivating stage cultivators. Is there a need to muster such a large force? Most likely they are a disciple of a big sect or the children of a great cultivator. Bah, goddamn second-generation cultivator. Yang Xiao also nodded. This Mansion of Light of the great Ming country really has no moral integrity, their servile face is really ridiculous. Compared to our wisdom sect, it's really a world of difference. Yes, if our wisdom sect manages this country, it would be thousands of times better than now. After talking for a while, the two of them began to fantasize about the scene where they would be conferred the title of king. The more they talked, the more excited they became. However, a moment later they suddenly felt that something was wrong. According to the usual rhythm, Elder Wen Bao should have already called them to stop, but now he didn't even say a word. When they turned their heads to look, they saw Wen Bao blankly staring at the two people coming from a distance. His eyes were filled with surprise as well as a bit of sourness. What is this situation? At this time the two people also came closer and their voices could be heard. Junior sister, you in front of us is the Mansion of Light. Thank you, senior brother Zhu Qin, for connecting me to this place. Otherwise I really don't know what to do. Chapter 114. Senior brother Zhu Qin, thank you for contacting the Mansion of Light for me. It's just that, mobilizing so many people it seems a bit. Yu Xinyao, who was surrounded by the crowd, was a bit uneasy. Although she came from an immortal cultivator family and her status was not inferior to that of an ordinary noble child, the atmosphere of being surrounded by people still made her feel very uncomfortable. However, Crown Prince Zhu Qin was much calmer. Junior sister is too polite, this matter is after all our fault first. After receiving junior sister's official letter, there was no reply within 10 days. The efficiency of the Mansion of Light really needs to be reorganized. As soon as these words came out, the aristocratic bureaucrats around the two of them suddenly showed a mixed expression of joy and worry. The officials related to the Mansion of Light were naturally worried, while the officials who were expected to replace those people seemed to see a great opportunity in front of them. However, Yu Xinyao gently frowned. Senior brother Zhu Qin, although I may not be qualified to say these words, But since we are already cultivators, then our mortal world's identity, Zhu Qin smiled. Junior sister is right, I am no longer the crown prince of the great Ming country, but just an ordinary cultivator in the Lingjian school. So you see, this time when I went home, I didn't even have the time to pay my respects to my parents. Instead, I accompanied junior sister to register with the Mansion of Light. Yu Xinyao also smiled and nodded. For senior brother, this is indeed a bit absurd, but, after all, the path of immortal and mortal are different. During the dialogue, the surrounding bureaucrats once again fell into a mix of joy and worry. If the crown prince really wanted to give up his mortal world's power and focus on immortal cultivation, it would be an earth-shattering event for the great Ming country. By the way, junior sister, what did you come to the great Ming country to deal with this time? It's a new sect that seems to have offended a lot of people, but I'm not very clear about the specific situation. That's why I need the cooperation of the Mansion of Light to investigate. That sect is very strange. Its development momentum is very rapid, and its development method is also very special. It is said that in just a few months the number of its followers has exceeded 1 million, but so far no one knows who the leader of this sect is. Oh? So special? And it's in the great Ming country? TSK, what are the people of the Mansion of Light doing? This kind of thing needs to be entrusted to you. By the way, junior sister, what is the name of that sect? A very strange name, Wisdom Sect. While talking, Yu Xinyao and Zhu Qin walked into the Mansion of Light. The rest of the officials lingered at the entrance for a moment before gradually dispersing. They were discussing about the chaos caused by the sudden arrival of Crown Prince Zhu Qin, as well as the various changes that might follow. Then not far away, the Wisdom Sect's 3 people who watched all of this fell into a long silence. Elder One, what should we do next? It seems that someone has colluded with the government of the Great Ming Empire to deal with us. Yihi sect leader was right. Under the tide of the new world, the old forces that are unwilling to die will certainly launch a crazy counterattack. But under the vast sea of believers, any resistance is futile. Elder One, can you still hear me? Poor Elder One, his consciousness still lingered on the scene a few minutes ago. When Zhu Qin and Yu Xinyao entered the Mansion of Light, Zhu Qin put his hand on Yu Xinyao's shoulder. Elder One, are we going back now? At the dining table in the inn, Guohong cautiously asked, and Yang Xiao also cast him a questioning look. Regarding this direct superior, the 2 assistants had a lot of contact, so they knew him very well. His temperament was simple, honest and gentle, but his reaction was slow. He belonged to the type that could do things but couldn't make a decision. Now that they encountered an unexpected change, the 2 assistants didn't have any confidence that Wen Bao could deal with it. Wen Bao himself was also confused. The current problem was too many and too complicated, far beyond his ability to deal with. Why did junior sister Yu Xinyao come to the Great Ming Empire? Why was she targeting the Wisdom Sect? A few months ago when he left the sect, he secretly paid attention to Yu Xinyao's whereabouts. If he remembered correctly, she went to the east to participate in the exploration of an ancient tomb, which was estimated to take nearly a year. Could it be that it ended ahead of time? As for Zhu Qin, it was not strange for him to appear here. He was the crown prince of the Great Ming Empire, so taking advantage of his experiential learning time to go home to visit his family was human nature. However, why would he be together with Yu Xinyao? When the 2 of them were on the mountain, they only had an ordinary martial brother and sister relationship. In addition to the experiential learning in the small clear sky peak, they didn't have any other contact. Of course, the most important thing right now was not to consider these personal affairs. As an elder of the Wisdom Sect, the real power of the Intelligence Revenue Service, he should put the sect's affairs first, that is. I want to go in and see the situation. What? Guohong and Yang Xiao were taken aback. Go in? Yes, know yourself and know your enemy and you will always be victorious. We can't let Zhu Qin and junior sister Yu. No, we can't let them collude with the Mansion of Light to make a plot against the sect. You 2 go back and report to the sect leader, I will deal with them here. Elder Yu. Guohong's eyes widened, incredulously looking at the determined face of the elder in front of him. Yang Xiao also wanted to say something but hesitated. Elder Wen, although you are indeed a gentle, kind and hard-working elder of the sect, there are some things that are really not suitable for you to do. Rest assured, no matter what, I am also a spirit sword. Wisdom Sect's elder. Wen Bao forcefully clenched his teeth. Although I am indeed not very good at this kind of thing, as long as my heart has the great ideal of sublimating the world, I will be successful in every endeavor. This is our Wisdom Sect's spiritual atomic bomb. Guohong's eyes widened even more. Elder, that so-called spiritual atomic bomb seems to have been criticized, saying that it's a mistake, I think. It doesn't matter, I'm left-handed. What? No, I mean, I have a wonderful plan that the sect leader gave me. With that, Wen Bao fiercely put the last pan-fried bun on the plate into his mouth, stood up, and went straight to the Mansion of Light. The wonderful plan in the bag was not a groundless lie. While walking, Wen Bao indeed took out a brocade bag from his mustard seed bag. After opening it, he saw that it was the note that Wang Lu had given him as a treasure, which was claimed to be able to stimulate the limit of one's potential and achieve an incredible effect. Wen Bao had never doubted Wang Lu's ability to create miracles. Therefore, although this wonderful plan was full of deceitful aura, Wen Bao still regarded it as his important card. However, Wang Lu also told him that unless it was an emergency, otherwise he shouldn't open the brocade bag. It was just that, the current situation should be regarded as an emergency, right? Senior brother, please help me. Then, with a pious heart, Wen Bao slightly trembled as he opened the note. There was only one line of words on it: "You are the awakening type Wen Bao." Wen Bao sighed, pinched his thumb and index finger, and then a wisp of flame burned the note. Damn it, I knew that guy was always a master of swindling people. The awakening type Wen Bao? Awakening your sister. Why don't you give me a piece of braised pork and then let me transform into great ancestor dishing? However, although he was angry, he had no other choice. Compared to his simple and honest gentle self, perhaps the awakening type was more capable. Fine, I am the awakening type Wen Bao, I am the awakening type Wen Bao, I am the awakening type Wen Bao, I am the awakening type Wen Bao. Along the way, Wen Bao constantly muttered to himself. Gradually, the simple and honest look in his eyes disappeared and was replaced by an unconcealable excitement. Haha, junior sister you, I'm coming to find you. Standing in front of the gate of the Mansion of Light, facing the vigilant and puzzled eyes of the guards, Wen Bao still had that simple and honest smile on his face. In his heart, half of it was nervous and the other half was excited. Even he himself could not tell what was going on with this awakening type Wen Bao personality, but, under extreme tension, he could indeed perform amazingly. And the rest would depend on whether he could perform amazingly. Excuse me, you are... After a long silence, one of the guards finally could not help but ask, Excuse me, you are... The fatty in front of them looked ordinary, but among the millions of people in the capital, except for lunatics and idiots, not many people would be willing to stay at the gate of the Mansion of Light. In the eyes of ordinary people, the people in the Mansion of Light were all crazy and dangerous swindlers or witch doctors. So much so that the remuneration of being a guard here was much higher than in other places. Then, if this fatty was not a lunatic or an idiot? Oh, I'm looking for someone. The fatty smiled foolishly. Looking for someone? Do you have relatives or friends in the mansion? Wen Bao smiled and did not waste any more time talking with the guards. Instead, he sent a wisp of flame from his fingertip into the sky. After the flame burst, a unique magical power fluctuation spread out on a small scale. A moment later, the gate of the Mansion of Light was opened from the inside. Yu Xinyao came out with a curious face and was surprised to see Wen Bao. Senior brother Wen Bao? When Wen Bao saw the young girl's beautiful face, he was also startled. He felt as if half of his mind had turned blank, while the other half became even more excited, urging him to greet her with a calm mind that was impossible for him to have. Hee junior sister you, good morning? Good morning, senior brother. The girl earnestly responded and then asked, Senior brother, are you looking for me? Yes, I'm looking for junior sister to do me a favor. Senior brother, please speak. Wen Bao smiled and pointed behind Yu Xinyao. Help me enter the gate, Yu Xinyao chuckled. The gate of the Mansion of Light is indeed not easy to enter. Then she turned her head and looked at the guards at the gate with an inquiring look. The two guards immediately felt their legs go soft. Although they haven't consulted their superiors who dared to say no at this time. Senior brother Wen Bao, are you also here for the wisdom sect? On the way to the gate, Yu Xinyao couldn't help but curiously ask. Wen Bao was startled and inwardly panicked, thinking, how come I haven't even had the time to cover it up, yet this secret is already exposed? Seeing his blank look, Yu Xinyao thought that he had never heard of the wisdom sect, so she patiently explained, it's a sect that has recently emerged in the Great Ming country. Its development is very fast and it has caused a lot of trouble. I thought senior brother is also here for it. Then she shook her head and changed the topic. I haven't seen senior brother for a few months, you've changed a lot, your cultivation has advanced. Seeing that the topic had changed, Wen Bao inwardly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there's still a long way to go to the 6th level. Yu Xinyao was even more surprised. Senior brother is about to advance to the middle level? That's amazing. I thought my harvest in the orchid tree ancient tomb is very big, but it seems like I'm still not as good as senior brother. I'm only at the middle level of the 7th level, still far from breaking through. While the two of them were talking, suddenly, a burst of laughter came from the front. Junior sister, you is too modest. In order to cultivate your primordial spirit, you deliberately suppressed your chi cultivating stage, but your real strength is not much worse than a 6th level cultivator. In our group of disciples, you can be regarded as one of the best. Along with the voice, Crown Prince Zhu Qin strode forward and grinned when he saw Wen Bao. Junior brother Wen Bao, I didn't expect to meet you here. Wen Bao was silent for a moment and then returned the smile. Junior brother Zhu Qin, good morning. Zhu Qin's expression suddenly stiffened. Zhu Qin. Junior brother? This dead fatty has always been respectful to Zhu Qin, calling him senior brother Zhu Qin, senior brother Zhu Qin, and senior brother Zhu Qin. But now, after not seeing him for a few months, in addition to his cultivation, his courage has also increased a lot. Thinking of this, Zhu Qin's smile gradually turned cold. Wen Bao also sneered. Idiot, you've never seen an awakening type Wen Bao. Chapter 115. The confrontation between Wen Bao and Zhu Qin did not last long. Just as Zhu Qin could no longer contain his anger and was about to worsen the situation, Junior sister, you interrupted him in time. If you have anything to say, why don't we? Zhu Qin was stunned for a moment before he smiled and said, yes, this is not the place to talk. Let's go inside and talk. He turned around and left without asking for Wen Bao's opinion. Wen Bao was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, let's talk inside? Alright, it's approved. Junior brother Zhu, you can go first. Zhu Qin stopped in his tracks. I haven't seen you for a few months. Junior brother, when you've changed a lot. However, not all changes are good. As a fellow disciple, let me give you a piece of advice. Our Lingjian school is one of the top 5 in the Wanxian League. Our disciples are much stronger than those in the same realm. Therefore, you might have the illusion that you are much stronger than when you were on the mountain. However, this kind of strength is only relative to those third-rate loose cultivators. However, before he could finish, Wen Bao had already interrupted him impatiently. Didn't you hear me asking you to go in and talk? If you don't want to talk, then go away. Don't block the door. Then he strode forward and attempted to enter the room. Zhu Qin looked at him with some surprise, but he didn't move. He wanted to give him a try. After a few months of not seeing each other, Zhu Qin naturally could see that Wen Bao's cultivation had made a great progress. However, any cultivator of the Lingjian school knew that cultivation stage and real strength were not equivalent. A few months ago, the 5th elder easily defeated the Yuanying stage old monster of Xingjing sect with her King Pill stage, which was still fresh in many people's memory. Wen Bao's cultivation was at the peak of level 7 Qi cultivating stage, and Zhu Qin was also at the peak of level 7. In these 8 months, his experience was even richer and more bizarre than Yu Xinyao's. More than 2 years of accumulation in the sect suddenly erupted. Not only did his cultivation soar, but his swordsmanship and primordial spirit cultivation had also made great progress. Compared to 8 months ago, his strength had more than doubled. He really didn't believe that the useless fatty could surpass him in 8 months, even if Wen Bao's spirit root was indeed of a better grade. Therefore he stood still. At the same time, he touched the little finger of his right hand with his thumb. A ripple of magic power spread throughout his body, making his skin as hard as steel. At the same time, his feet were connected to the ground, making him as stable as a rock. At this moment, even if they used a siege hammer that required dozens of strong men to push it together to hit him, he was confident that he wouldn't budge even half a step. Nowadays, many people's impression of cultivators was that of flying swords and flying immortals. In reality, if needed, cultivators could stand more steadily than anyone else. Senior brother Zhu Qin, senior brother Wen Bao, you guys? Yu Xinyao wanted to stop this meaningless collision, but unfortunately, before she could make her move, Wen Bao suddenly rushed forward and collided with Zhu Qin head-on. Bang! After a muffled sound, Zhu Qin staggered back with an incredulous look in his eyes. His last step just happened to land on the threshold, and with a crack, the thick threshold was directly trampled. You cough. Zhu Qin was about to say something, but he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest, causing him to cough incessantly, unable to say anything. That violent collision just now not only scattered his magic power, but also caused his breathing to go astray, injuring his lungs. The injury was not serious and his magic power could be healed, but this was a real loss. Moreover, he didn't lose to anyone else but to Wen Bao. For a moment, Zhu Qin's complexion changed several times, and he was extremely embarrassed. Wen Bao, on the other hand, simply and nimbly took this opportunity to step into the door. Glancing at junior sister Yu's surprised gaze, his heart set off a sea of joy. Ah! Zhu Qin, you big idiot. Of all things to compare with me, you just have to compete with brute force. I, your father, have been the head of the infrastructure department for 8 months, and I've almost used the king pill to carry bricks. Okay. If we were to compete with magic or one-on-one on the stage, perhaps I wouldn't have a high chance of winning. But if you want to compete with me in brute force, even those foundation establishment stage heads in the department can't win against me. You, a low-level chi cultivating stage, are absolutely courting death, haha. Sorry, although senior brother Wang Lu always said that showing off and slapping the face is the most vulgar scene in the world, your father, I like it. The confrontation at the front door suddenly weakened Zhu Qin's momentum. After the three of them entered the room and took their respective seats, the dominant power was completely in the hands of Wen Bao. Regardless of Zhu Qin's attempt to stop him, Wen Bao calmly sat in the main seat of the hall and opened his mouth like an old man. Hehe, I thought that the next time we brothers and sisters meet again, it would be at least a few months later when we return to the mountain. I didn't expect that the Blue River region is so vast, but we can actually meet in the Great Ming country, what a coincidence. Zhu Qin coldly snorted, his eyes glanced at the back hall, but he didn't say anything. Yu Xinyao faintly smiled. It's indeed a coincidence, unexpected. Wen Bao also said, it's rare for the three of us to get together, why don't we talk about what we've experienced in the past 8 months? I heard that junior sister you explored an ancient tomb, did you encounter any danger? Yu Xinyao froze for a moment. She was not used to this proactive and cheerful Wen Bao, but hearing his question she honestly replied, it's not really dangerous, it was a daunting experience but no mishap. Junior sister, you're too modest. If it was really a daunting experience but no mishap, your primordial spirit couldn't be this stable. Although your cultivation is only at the 7th level, your primordial spirit is not weaker than the average 6th level cultivator. Junior sister, you shook her head. Senior brother can accurately judge the strength of my primordial spirit, which shows that I can release the power of my primordial spirit, but I can't withdraw it. I still need to think about it. Wen Bao said, primordial spirit and chi cultivating stage should be synchronized in order to have the best effect. Junior sister, you shouldn't be obsessed with primordial spirit cultivation. Thank you for reminding me, senior brother. I will pay attention to it. In just a few words of dialogue, Wen Bao's face was calm and collected, but inwardly he was so happy that he almost fainted. In the past 2 years on the Spirit Sword Mountain, he had never had such a dialogue with Yu Xinyao. Right now, this awesome senior brother style was really too satisfying. The awakening type Wen Bao was really awesome. At the same time, the suppressed Zhu Qin looked at Wen Bao with a puzzled look. He inwardly thought, could it be that the experiential learning of this sect is really that magical that it could let a waste be reborn? This is really, really strange. The three people in the main hall of the Mansion of Light continued to talk. Time quickly slipped away. During this period, only Yu Xinyao, who was slightly uneasy, asked if it was not good to have a private chat in a place where other people were handling official business. Wen Bao confidently said, the Mansion of Light is the place to handle the cultivators' affairs. The three of us are cultivators, so isn't our conversation the cultivators' affairs? Talking here is a matter of course. With a heroic spirit that completely didn't belong to a chi cultivating stage cultivator, Wen Bao, who was sitting in the main hall, became more and more happy. Next, as long as he dominated the topic, leading the two people's attention to a completely irrelevant place and making them forget about the damn wisdom sect, he would win. After a while, Wen Bao's mouth became dry, so he casually picked up the teacup and took a sip. Although it's cold, it's really good tea. When he turned around, he saw that junior sister Yu looked embarrassed. Zhu Qin, with a mocking expression, said, it's indeed good tea, drinking other people's saliva tea without even knowing it. Senior brother Wen Bao, your cultivation base has greatly increased, but your sense of shame has also greatly advanced. Wen Bao was startled. Just at this time, a cold female voice came from the back of the hall. Your Royal Highness, is the tea that I've drunk that dirty? While speaking, a luxuriously dressed woman slowly walked out. That woman was about 24 or 25 years old, with a tall stature and delicate features. However, her face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost, which made people feel intimidated. The woman came out from the back of the hall and looked at Wen Bao. Originally, the awakening type Wen Bao could easily deal with Zhu Qin, but when he was stared at by that woman, he unexpectedly felt a chill in his heart, and his awakened personality also shrank a bit. The woman then looked at the teacup in Wen Bao's hand. Her pair of elegant eyebrows slightly wrinkled, but she didn't say anything. She just handed over a thick stack of letters to Zhu Qin. Your Royal Highness, this is what you're looking for, the various kinds of letters that the Mansion of Light has recently received. Before she finished speaking, Crown Prince Zhu Qin frowned. There aren't many, can't the people of your mansion even deal with these? Do you have to let junior sister you wait for 10 days? The woman sneered. Your Royal Highness, listen to what I have to say. These are just the list of letters, the rest of the letters are stored in the warehouse. There are more than 2,000 letters, does your Royal Highness want to take a closer look? Zhu Qin was surprised. So many? All the matters related to the cultivators of the great Ming country are gathered here, how can there not be a lot? The imperial court is afraid of the Mansion of Light, so they don't allow us to set up branches everywhere. From the big ones like the Wanxian League to some small sects whose names have never been heard of, they all have to be dealt with by the people of this mansion. So, some delays are inevitable. Zhu Qin frowned. Your Excellency, what do you mean? Oh? Your Royal Highness, you don't understand? Then I will make it clear. The current Mansion of Light is not enough to meet the various requirements of your Royal Highness. Moreover, if the imperial court allows the situation to deteriorate, then the functions of the Mansion of Light will collapse, and it will not be strange for the Wanxian League to replace it. Zhu Qin was a bit embarrassed. These things, do you need to say it here? Without showing any weakness, Lord Qian Hu asked back, just now you three can say it here, but why can't I say anything about the Mansion of Light? Seeing that Zhu Qin's face turned red from being questioned, the woman sighed. Your Royal Highness, I have no intention to embarrass you, I just want you to understand a simple fact through these questions. The current Mansion of Light has no ability to deal with the cultivators of the great Ming country, at least the Mansion of Light built here is powerless. If you don't believe me, I can give you a simple example. This time, if I didn't end my closed-door training in advance, I'm afraid I wouldn't have found an interesting thing. There is an interesting thing? Zhu Qin subconsciously asked back, but found out that his nervous voice was ridiculous. The aura of this Lord Qian Hu of the Mansion of Light was too strong. Just now, when she was sitting in the main seat and drinking tea, she didn't show it, but at this time, her aura was completely released, making people unable to speak. Lord Qian Hu smiled, stretched out her right hand, and 2 letters appeared out of thin air in her white and tender palm. This is the letter that fellow Taoist Yu Xinyao submitted 13 days ago, which mentioned her cultivation base, her sect, and the reason why she came to the great Ming country. For the wisdom sect, right? Yu Xinyao nodded. Lord Qian Hu smiled. Thank you for your cooperation. As far as I know, the disciples of the famous upright sects are often unwilling to abide by these cumbersome rules. On the other side, 3 days ago I received an interesting letter. While speaking, her 2 fingers pinched one of the letters together. It's the letter of introduction from the wisdom sect. The letter mentioned that they have sent 3 diplomatic envoys, and the one leading them. While speaking, the woman's eyes turned and stared at Wen Bao's pale face. His name is Wen Bao, right? The fatty exhausted all of his strength to squeeze out a smile from the corner of his mouth, but there was only one voice left in his heart. Senior brother, save me. Chapter 116. Oh, did you get into trouble again? Just as Wen Bao was inwardly screaming for help, Wang Lu's voice rang out just in time. Senior brother? Don't worry, it's me. You idiot, did you forget the psychic jade? Ah, that is. I spent countless spirit stones to buy it from the mysterious sky mansion for division chiefs like you. It's a precious tool to communicate with each other in times of emergency. I personally implanted it in you, did you forget? I didn't forget, but senior brother, you said this jade is priceless even if you sold me, so I didn't dare to use it. Damn, how stupid are you? Forget it, time is limited. I received Guohong and Yang Zhao's urgent message. I thought you would be able to deal with it after you awakened, but it seems the situation has changed. Tell me what happened in the shortest time possible, and then I will think of a way to deal with it. Wang Lu's words were quick and urgent. Wen Bao would have been frightened, but now he felt indescribably at ease. As long as senior brother takes action, everything will be successful. The conversation in his mind only took a few seconds, and Wen Bao explained the cause and effect of the matter. Wang Lu was silent for a moment and then said, the current situation is really troublesome. That Qian Hu of the Mansion of Light is a capable person. Just relying on the psychic jade or a wonderful plan is not enough. But it doesn't matter, I will do it myself. Wen Bao was surprised. Senior brother, you will do it yourself? Where are you now? Wang family village, where else? I'm afraid it's too late. Nonsense, of course it's too late to do it yourself, but there is no need to be so troublesome. Put your primordial spirit into the psychic jade and leave the rest to me. When Bao froze for a moment, trying to recall the details of the psychic jade in his mind. That was a mid-grade spirit object worth thousands of spirit stones. In addition to being able to use the primordial spirit to communicate in an emergency, its biggest use was to have the primordial spirit descend. When Bao's body was implanted with the psychic jade, so Wang Lu could control his words and actions like a puppet. But due to the strength of the primordial spirit, he could not do any complicated actions. At most he could only speak and wave his hand. Senior brother, can you do it? Wang Lu sneered, to deal with this group of scum, it's enough that you can talk. Alright, you can step down. Let the professionals do the rest. After saying that, when Bao felt his primordial spirit tremble and was sucked into the psychic jade. Although his connection with his physical body was still there, he could only hear, not speak, see, and not move. The control of his body was taken over by Wang Lu. Senior brother, what should we do next? When Bao was very nervous. Originally, the awakening type Wen Bao had almost controlled the situation, but who knew that the Mansion of Light's Qian Hu would force him into a dead end? Sure enough, as his senior brother had said, behind every awakening type there was a local tyrant who was ready to kill them in seconds. Although he did not understand the specific meaning, it probably meant that fortune and misfortune depended on each other. After a few moments of delay, the situation in the main hall of the Mansion of Light had changed. After that female Qian Hu exposed Wen Bao's identity, whether it was Yu Xinyao or Zhu Qin, both of them never thought that. Zhu Qin was silent, but junior sister Yu couldn't help but ask, Senior brother Wen Bao, why do you want to collude with the wisdom sect? As for the Mansion of Light's Qian Hu, after the curtain of the good show was lifted, she took a few steps back with a trace of a smile on her face. Senior brother Wen Bao, I don't know much about the wisdom sect situation, but that sect is obviously not a decent sect. Perhaps you've been deceived. Junior sister Yu had a gentle character. She didn't like to think the worst of people, and even more so, she didn't like to resort to her words. At this time, it was clear that in her mind, the wisdom sect was not just a simple sect that was not decent. The fact that she wasted her precious experiential learning time to come to the great Ming country was enough to explain the problem. All of a sudden, when Bao felt that his mind was particularly clear, he immediately thought of many things. Perhaps it was because at this time Wang Lu was using the psychic jade to remotely control him, so that Wen Bao could share the professional adventurer's thinking ability. However, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that things were tricky. How should he explain the wisdom sect's matter to junior sister Yu? As the head of the infrastructure department, Wen Bao, of course, knew the world's prejudice against the wisdom sect. Although the heaven-burning blood technique had gradually been used less recently, and when it was popularized, it was also slightly modified. However, in many people's eyes, the wisdom sect was an out-and-out cult. Moreover, it was a cult with a rapid development momentum and a particularly great harm. Should he seriously explain the sect's purpose and ideals to junior sister Yu? How should he explain his identity as an elder in the sect? Should he conceal his senior brother and sister Ling's identity? Then just when Wen Bao was having a headache, Wang Lu, or the Wen Bao controlled by Wang Lu, opened his mouth. Junior sister Yu, actually, I joined the wisdom sect because of you. Wen Bao almost lost his consciousness on the spot. Upon hearing this, Yu Xinyao gawked. Then she saw Wang Lu controlling Wen Bao put on a particularly natural smile and said, Since I've been exposed, I have to confess. Yes, I did join the wisdom sect. Moreover, my position in the sect is not low. I'm an elder with real power. Yu Xinyao tilted her head in confusion. What? Wang Lu said with a sinking voice, For you? Me? The young girl's eyes flashed with confusion and surprise. But what does this have to do with me? Because I like you. When Bao finally couldn't bear the emotional ups and downs and resolutely fainted, Wang Lu said with a smile, Because I like you, therefore, I want to be a man worthy of you. Although my father is a country-state preceptor, the power of the mortal world is meaningless to cultivators. But, junior sister Yu, you came from an immortal cultivation family in the Cloud region. Compared to you, I'm just an insignificant poor person, so how could I not strive hard? Being stared at by the opposite party's incomparably sincere gaze, Yu Xinyao's face turned crimson. She couldn't help but turn her head away, unable to speak. Zhu Qin, who had been silent for a long time, slowly said, Junior brother Wen, your explanation is a bit far-fetched. If you want to strive hard, isn't cultivating in the sect better than anything else? Why would you want to associate yourself with the evil sect? Wang Lu chuckled. If cultivating in the mountain is better than anything else, why would the elders arrange this one-year experiential learning? Since it's experiential learning, if everyone is like Crown Prince Zhu, surrounded by beauties, how different would it be from cultivating in the mountain? It's nothing more than seeing more people, seeing more things just like a passerby. I remember when the fifth elder ridiculed Taoist Master Jifeng, we were all listening from the side. Have you forgotten the elder's teachings? Being questioned by Wang Lu, Zhu Qin suddenly choked. After a moment he sneered and said, even if you want to personally experience the scenery of the 9 regions immortal cultivation world, it's not worthwhile to throw yourself into the mud. Wang Lu chuckled again. Junior brother Zhu Qin, haven't you heard of the saying, unstained in the mud? It seems like your state of mind is still not enough. Unstained your sister. Zhu Qin almost choked on his breath. You have the nerve to say that? After Yu Xinyao and Zhu Qin were defeated one after another, that cold female voice, as expected, passed into his ears. According to your statement, you joined the wisdom sect for immortal cultivation? Wang Lu inwardly sneered. I've been waiting for you. To be able to force the awakening type Wen Bao into a dead end, this great Ming country indeed has a capable person, unfortunately. Unfortunately, you've met a professional. Not for immortal cultivation, but for the person I like. Wang Lu said, lightly denying Qianhu's assumption. Qianhu sneered. For your own personal feelings, so you, however, before she could finish, she was interrupted by Wang Lu. So it's not only for junior sister you, but also for you. Qianhu's prepared long speech was suddenly choked. Meh. Wang Lu leisurely said, yes, because I like you. Wen Bao, who had just woken up, was completely finished. At the same time, the hall seemed to have been extinguished by a sword. It was completely silent. You said. Qianhu's voice was dry and difficult. Her previous confidence was completely disrupted by Wang Lu's sudden statement. If it was an ordinary person, she would just sneer and say, what nonsense are you talking about? Then she would just use her flying sword to kill him. However, the opposite party was clearly the Crown Prince's martial brother. Moreover, his origin was extraordinary, which made her quite afraid. Wang Lu seized the opportunity and said with a smile, I like you, that's why I want to join the wisdom sect. While striving to become a man worthy of junior sister you, I also want to do something for you. You joined the wisdom sect because of me? Yes. Wang Lu was silent for a moment and then said, Li Nana, your ancestral home is Eugene country in the southern heaven region. My father moved here and was recognized by the imperial court of the great Ming country to be in charge of the Mansion of Light. After the death of my father, you inherited the position. Due to the limitation of your age and aptitude, the support from the imperial court is not as strong as before, and the power of the imperial court is declining day by day, no longer able to restore its former glory. Am I right? Li Nana was somewhat surprised, but soon realized that this information was not mysterious, so it was normal for the other party to find it. In fact, at this time in the Wang family village thousands of miles away, Wang Lu had indeed just received the urgent information from Yi Chuchen. He was reading it while making it up. Your aptitude is very good, and you also have the brilliant cultivation method from your father. Now, at such a young age, you have already reached the foundation establishment stage, even faster than many disciples in the Wanxian League. What's more, you have experienced the ways of the world since you were a child, so you are much smarter than the average cultivators. But even so, your hands and feet are tied in the Mansion of Light. Even our wisdom sect's wildfire like rapid development is powerless to stop it, so much so that we almost couldn't detect it. Of course, it's not that you're incompetent, it's that this deformed institution has already decayed. Therefore let me help you. You? What is the thing that the Mansion of Light lacks the most? It's manpower, a large number of branches that can be spread all over the country, as well as a large number of grassroots workers, just like the country's official system. However, because of too many reasons, the Mansion of Light has been a mere figurehead these past few years, like a castle in the air, lacking in support. Moreover, our wisdom sect happens to be rooted in the grassroots, and in this country's grassroots, we have an unparalleled influence. The information that you've discovered about the sect is nothing more than a bit of loose sand that leaked out from the cracks of our fingers. Of course, if we really want to change the sky, we have neither the ability nor the need. However, I think the Wisdom Sect and the Mansion of Light should establish a cooperative relationship, each taking what they need and complementing each other's weakness. You need the grassroots execution power of the Wisdom Sect, and we also need the upper-level power of the Mansion of Light. At least, we need a status. The cooperation between the two organizations, if only driven by interest, is not stable enough, then wouldn't it be better to add the emotional factor? This? Linana tightly furrowed her brows, crossed her arms and fell into contemplation. Obviously, she had been moved by these words. Ridiculous. At this time, Zhu Qin voiced out his objection. Are you kidding me? The great Ming country's Mansion of Light wants to collude with your cult? Cult. Wang Lu sneered. In addition to me, have you ever seen any other wisdom sect disciple? Your understanding of this sect is limited to the text that has been filtered and modified by who knows how many people, yet you boldly assert that this is a cult that's not worth cooperating with, even disregarding our friendship as fellow disciples. Junior brother Zhu Qin, is this the result of your 8 months of cultivation down the mountain? Ridiculous, it's really ridiculous. You, as early as thousands of years ago, great ancestor Dishing said that without investigation, you have no right to speak. Unexpectedly, until today you still haven't learned your lesson. You want to know whether the wisdom sect is a cult or not? It's very simple. Come with me, personally experience the life of the wisdom sect, conduct an in-depth investigation, and then use your brain to think about it and come to a conclusion. What do you think, junior sister? You come with me? Just consider this a rare experience. Zhu Qin froze for a long time, and then laughed in spite of himself. Ridiculous, simply ridiculous. You. Before his voice fell, he heard a cold female voice next to him. Okay. I'm indeed interested in the cooperation you said. Zhu Qin felt that his eyes were not big enough to take in. Miss Qian, you should think about it clearly. However, Linana simply ignored him. Zhu Qin had to turn his head to seek the help of another person. Junior sister, you, who knew that Yu Xinyao actually chuckled and said, I think what senior brother said is right. Without investigation you have no right to speak. What the hell? He will kill you. Yu Xinyao seriously shook her head and looked at the opposite side with her clear and gentle eyes. He won't. He said he likes me. Chapter 117. Resuscitation. When Bao felt that the age of chaos was about to come. At the same time he confessed to Yu Xinyao and Li Nana. Senior brother, you really won't give up until you kill me. I thought that I would be able to escape after calling for help, but in the end, senior brother, you kicked me to hell the moment you arrived. Alas, next would I be boiled by junior sister Yu, or braised by Li Nana? Junior sister Yu was gentle and generous. Most likely she would just break off their friendship. However, that Mansion of Light's Qian who looked fierce and ruthless, moreover, her cultivation level was not low. It was very likely that she would give him a big punishment, making him beg for death. Idiot, wake up. Wang Lu's voice promptly brought Wen Bao back to reality. I have temporarily controlled the crisis, but it's far from the point where I can relax. The Psychic Jade's time limit is almost up, you must stabilize the situation. I'm rushing here at full speed, estimated to arrive in 1 day. 1 day. That's too long, senior brother. Facing that Qian who I can't even hold on for a quarter of an hour. Is that so? Then I'll just come a bit later. I'll remember to bring you a wreath. Wen Bao was suddenly speechless. But, in this situation, senior brother, are you going to officially show yourself? Don't talk nonsense. If my identity is exposed, it's tantamount to wasting all my previous efforts. So, remember, even if others suspect me, you must never admit that I have any relationship with you here. I, your father, have never been to the great Ming country. As soon as I went down the mountain, I went to the Kanglin country for a vacation, understand? Ah, the Kanglin country? Yes, you, the son of the state preceptor, have secretly arranged 72 virgins for me to enjoy. In short, I have nothing to do with the wisdom sect. Even if someone points a flying sword at your dick and forces you to admit it, you must not admit it. Wen Bao was about to ask more, but Wang Lu's voice in his mind has already disappeared. The psychic jade also became dim and completely lost its effect. After regaining his composure, Wen Bao found himself still sitting in the main hall of the Mansion of Light. Li Nana, Yu Xinyao, and Zhu Qin were all pondering something. No one spoke. After a while, Li Nana was the first to break the silence. Tomorrow at this time, we'll talk about the cooperation in detail. Please prepare the materials carefully. This isn't a small matter that can be brushed off. With that, Lord Qian Hu turned around and returned to the back hall. He did not bring up the topic of, I like you again. This made Wen Bao heave a sigh of relief. Thus, there were only the 3 people from Lingjian school left in the hall. After a long silence, Zhu Qin sighed and wanted to speak, but unexpectedly, Yu Xinyao was 1 step ahead and said, Senior brother Zhu Qin? I want to talk to senior brother alone, is that okay? Zhu Qin felt as if there was a stone in front of his chest. It was so stuffy that he couldn't breathe. For Yu Xinyao, this gentle and kind junior sister, it would be a lie to say that he didn't have any thoughts about her. There were a lot of female cultivators on Spirit Sword Mountain, and their quality was also quite high. However, only a few of them really caught his eye. Of course, it wasn't necessarily a strong thought. However, watching a girl who had a good relationship with him fall into the arms of a dead fatty was really hard to accept. It was as if he had swallowed a plate of fly sashimi. While he was hesitating, Yu Xinyao urged again, "Senior brother Zhu Qin, I'm very sorry." Zhu Qin had to reluctantly smile. "It's okay, I'll go sit in the back, you guys talk first." When he left the main hall, this level 7 Qi cultivating stage cultivator with an exceptionally solid body refining stage foundation actually staggered a few steps and almost fell. "Then it's just the two of us, senior brother?" Being stared at by Yu Xinyao's gentle and sweet smile, Wen Bao felt that his primordial spirit was about to disperse. Although junior sister Yu was very good to him before, she never had this kind of enchanting gentleness. "Senior brother, you're really my good leader, my good senior brother. Just for this watery gaze, I'm willing to die right now." However, the next moment, Yu Xinyao's words made Wen Bao fall from the sky. "It's senior brother Wang Lu, isn't it?" The one who spoke just now was senior brother Wang Lu, isn't it? "Ha, junior sister, you're really?" Wen Bao was ready to deny it at the first moment. After all, Wang Lu's warning still lingered in his ears. "Remember, even if others doubt you, you must never admit that you have any relationship with me here." However, Wen Bao had to admit that under the gaze of junior sister Yu, lying was easier said than done. The only thing he could do was to keep his mouth shut. Seeing Wen Bao's silence, Yu Xinyao knew that her guess was right. She couldn't help but smile. "Senior brother Wen, the way you spoke just now is really not like you at all." Wen Bao was disheartened. Yes, a mere Wen Bao, even if he was awakened, how could he be a match for senior brother Wang Lu's finger? The other side only used their primordial spirit to control him to speak, yet he was able to solve the crisis that he was helpless against. Keenly aware of Wen Bao's mood, Yu Xinyao quickly explained, "Senior brother Wen Bao, I just want to say that kind of aggressive speech just now is not your style. Compared to senior brother Wang Lu, you're more gentle and down to earth. This is not a shortcoming, it's just a person's characteristic. Just like in our 9 regions people have black hair and black eyes, but in the Western continent, there are many people with blonde hair and blue eyes. There's no difference in superiority or inferiority." Hearing this, Wen Bao reluctantly smiled. Being able to be gently comforted by junior sister Yu was already worth it. Just now, it was senior brother Wang Lu's words. That wisdom sect should be his doing. Hey, if it was him, then it's not strange. Senior brother Wang Lu has always been very good at doing this kind of thing. In the Immortal Gathering, although I'm just an outer court disciple, later on, Master explained to us the Peach Blossom Village and other checkpoints. It is said that only he can dig out the hidden elements of the Peach Blossom Village. He's really amazing. Wen Bao forced a smile and nodded. "Of course, senior brother Wen Bao, you're also very amazing. You can always follow senior brother Wang Lu's side to gain experience together with him. If it were me, I would probably soon be left behind." Yu Xinyao somewhat dejectedly shook her head. "However, in any case, since the wisdom sect is senior brother Wang Lu's doing, then you should be relieved. Probably, the rumor is wrong. I'll have to trouble you to tell senior brother Wang Lu that I'm willing to believe him, so there's no need to conduct a field investigation, which would only cause you trouble. In any case, 9 months have passed and I'm going back to the mountain in a few days. At worst, I'll just cultivate in the Spirit Creek town and consolidate the harvest from the ancient tomb exploration." Wen Bao gawked for a moment and then immediately reacted. "Junior sister, you can't." Yu Xinyao slightly widened her eyes. "Can't?" Wen Bao inwardly panicked, knowing that he had said the wrong thing. However, if he really let junior sister Yu go back to the mountain, in case the situation of the wisdom sect was known by the elders, especially the disciplinary elder, that old man would definitely not be as easy to talk to as junior sister Yu. What's more, no matter how senior brother Wang Lu would deal with the wrath of the disciplinary elder, he, Wen Bao, as the culprit who leaked the news, would most likely die. So what should I do now? What should I do? Don't panic. Yes, don't panic, I'm the awakening type Wen Bao, the awakening type Wen Bao. Junior sister, I think, instead of leaving so early, it's better to come to the wisdom sect to take a look. The development of this sect is really interesting. These past few months of experiential learning have really benefited me a lot. Yu Xinyao still hesitated. But, senior brother Wang Lu, Won't he think that I'm a hindrance? Wen Bao hastily said, "You see, even a clumsy person like me." As soon as his voice fell, Wen Bao fiercely covered his mouth. His heart was filled with hatred and he wanted to slap his own mouth. "You big idiot, how could you so easily spill the beans? Wouldn't that be tantamount to admitting the existence of senior brother Wang Lu? Senior brother clearly told me that even if the other side has already suspected me, I must not admit it." And sure enough, a trace of complacency flashed through junior sister Yu's eyes. "If senior brother Wang Lu doesn't mind, that would be great. Later on, please take care of me, senior brother Wen Bao." Wen Bao wanted to cry but had no tears. "Junior sister Yu, you're such a gentle and amiable person, how could you become bad? Scheming against a fool like me is not a skill at all. What should we do, senior brother Zhu Qin?" While leaving the mansion of light with Wen Bao, Yu Xinyao worriedly asked, "Senior brother Zhu Qin?" Yu Xinyao nodded and said, "I think senior brother Wang Lu doesn't want the matter of the wisdom sect to be known by the sect, right? Senior brother Wang Lu is very similar to his master. He often has unexpected words and deeds, and the sect's elders are not used to it. Therefore, I guess he probably doesn't want the matter of the wisdom sect to be known by others. However, senior brother Zhu Qin should soon guess that senior brother Wang Lu and the wisdom sect may have some relationship, and senior brother Zhu Qin is a person who cares about the sect's rules, so he may immediately write a report to the sect. That's why I want to ask, what should we do?" Wen Bao froze for a moment. He felt a splitting headache, thinking, "Immortal path, I'm just the head of the infrastructure department, good at moving bricks and moving bricks. I can barely act like a grandson. This kind of thing that needs to use my brain is really not suitable for me." Yu Xinyao said with a smile, "Then, do you want to contact senior brother Wang Lu?" Wen Bao helplessly buried his face between his hands. I was wrong." One day later, Wang Lu arrived on time. In the inn where Wen Bao lived, Wang Lu cordially met with his junior sister Yu Xinyao. "Junior sister, welcome to the wisdom sect." Wang Lu's straightforwardness surprised Yu Xinyao. The girl was somewhat flustered. She never thought that senior brother Wang Lu would be so straightforward. His identity should be highly confidential, right? "Senior brother, believe me, no matter what you've heard before, when you personally experience my sect, you will find that the wisdom sect will not let you down." With that, Wang Lu changed the subject. "Wen Bao?" Wen Bao was alarmed. "Senior brother? I remember that the appointment between you and Chen Huna is coming soon, right? Then what are you still standing here foolishly waiting for? No matter what, she's still a mansion leader. Do you, a small department head, want to let her wait for you? But, rest assured, this level of negotiation can't be finished in 1 or 2 days. Today at most, the wisdom sect and the mansion of light will probe each other's bottom line. Just pick a few things that you know about the sect and tell her. Remember to pick some beautiful words. It doesn't matter if it's a bit exaggerated. As for the intrigue, we'll talk about it later." Wen Bao asked, "If she asks a question that I don't understand, or if she asks about the sect's secrets, what should I do? Do you still need me to teach you this? As long as you show a meaningful smile and then don't say a word, that's enough." Okay, the fool's tutorial ends here. You go deal with Chen Huna, junior sister Yu, and I will go deal with Zhu Qin. Time is pressing, let's go. Chapter 118. When Wen Bao, with a sullen face, took his 2 assistants to find Chen Hu to torture him, Wang Lu and Yu Xinyao also set off from the inn to find trouble with Zhu Qin. "Senior brother Wang Lu, On the way, Yu Xinyao wanted to explain something, but Wang Lu stopped her. "No need to apologize. To be able to pull such a strong helper like junior sister Yu, I'm very glad." Yu Xinyao froze for a moment, a smile hanging on her face. He was indeed worthy of being senior brother Wang Lu. He didn't need to open his mouth to know what she wanted to say, and he even comforted her in advance. Compared to before he went down the mountain, the current Wang Lu appeared to be more tactful and mature. If it was a year ago, it would be hard to imagine that he could say those words. And this kind of Wang Lu undoubtedly made her. "Senior brother, what should we say to senior brother Zhu Qin later? I'm afraid he won't be easy to talk to." Wang Lu said, "I know, that's why I have to come out personally, otherwise Wen Bao would be fine. That dead fatty's legs are easily weak in front of women, but he can still be used in front of men." Thinking of yesterday in the Mansion of Light, the awakening type Wen Bao suppressed the dignified Crown Prince Zhu Qin, Yu Xinyao couldn't help but chuckle. Senior brother Wen Bao's progress in these 8 months is really fast. Senior brother, your guidance is really good. Wang Lu also proudly patted his chest. The revolutionary team can temper people the most. What team? Nothing. "Oh, we're here." While talking, the two had arrived at Zhu Qin's residence. Of course, it was the imperial city of the Great Ming country. The security of the imperial city of a country was far more strict than that of the Mansion of Light. On both sides of the magnificent and imposing gate, there were 2 rows of more than 10 guards. Not only were they not ordinary people, their cultivation base had even reached the foundation establishment stage. The standard armor and spears on their bodies were all middle-grade magical tools, which were of considerable value. Yu Xinyao couldn't help but sigh. The Great Ming country is only a middle-ranked country in the Blue River region. I didn't expect the imperial city to have such an imposing manner. If I'm not mistaken, I'm afraid the imperial city is also guarded by Taoist Master King Pill. However, Wang Lu did not care at all. It's just someone hired from the mysterious Sky Mansion to keep up appearances. Perhaps the enlightened master has the King Pill, but I'm afraid that it's not very useful. Its actual ability can only be considered as a void core. Yu Xinyao was somewhat puzzled. What do you mean? To put it simply, the imperial court of the Great Ming country does not have its own immortal cultivator forces. It has fostered several immortal cultivator sects, but none of them are presentable. This can be seen from the predicament of the Mansion of Light. Therefore, when the imperial court of the Great Ming country wants to use the power of cultivators, they can only buy or rent. But now, the business of the mysterious Sky Mansion is getting better and better. As long as they are willing to pay, they can even hire King Pill level fighters. Yu Xinyao tilted her head and thought for a moment. That's not bad for the Great Ming country. If it's difficult to train from the beginning, then renting ready-made fighters is also very good. Wang Lu spread out his hands. For a small country like the Kanglan country, it's indeed better to rent than to buy. But the Great Ming country is also a middle-ranked country, so they can't be so lacking in ambition. Take the King Pill in the imperial city as an example. If one day the evil sect King Pill comes to massacre the city, do you expect this rented King Pill to fight for you? After 2 or 3 moves it will escape. Its actual effect is just a void core. Such a big country with tens of millions of people, do you think it's reliable to have a void core level cultivator to guard it? Yu Xinyao nodded. I understand, thank you, senior brother, for your advice. The two of them chatted openly at the gate of the imperial city, which naturally fell into the eyes of the guards. One after another they cast a vigilant look at them. However, Wang Lu and Yu Xinyao obviously came from an extraordinary background, and they didn't enter the forbidden area of the imperial city, so it was inconvenient for them to say anything. But the next moment, Wang Lu ignited a wisp of flame with one hand and sent it into the air with a loud bang, which made them feel embarrassed. According to the rules, spells were not allowed to be used around the imperial city. Violators. Fortunately, before they could find it difficult to deal with the violators, a person quickly walked out of the city to greet the 2 uninvited guests. Zhu Qin's face hung a triumphant smile as if he couldn't wait to greet them. Yesterday he was frightened by the amazing performance of the awakening type Wen Bao. After returning to the imperial city, Zhu Qin couldn't sleep at night. Finally, amidst his insomnia, a light flashed in his mind and he guessed some clues. He didn't have Yu Xinyao's keen intuition, which could directly perceive the existence of the psychic jade. However, he knew that Wen Bao, that dead fatty, was essentially just a waste. Although his potential was good, how much could he dig out by himself? When he was on the mountain he was an out-and-out waste. Thanks to Wang Lu's help, his cultivation base could advance by leaps and bounds. Now, after he went down the mountain for more than 8 months, even his character had changed greatly. It was obvious that Wang Lu was behind this. And that wisdom sect, of course, was also promoted by Wang Lu. Last night he got the information about the wisdom sect from the imperial spies. Just the number of more than 1 million followers was enough to make people's hair stand on end. He couldn't think of anyone who could quietly develop such a huge force, relative to the Great Ming country's intelligence system, in just half a year. However, if it was related to Wang Lu, it seemed to be a lot more normal. In fact, no matter how unwilling Zhu Qin was, he had to admit that, in terms of ability, Wang Lu, this successor disciple, was too far ahead of him. Now, facing Wen Bao, Zhu Qin could still have a sense of superiority, but if Wang Lu came, perhaps he wouldn't even have the courage to face the opposite party. He and Wang Lu didn't have any deep hatred toward each other. However, in the past few years their relationship was by no means harmonious. If Wang Lu was like the previous 2 years, other than being a bookworm, then that would be fine. However, ever since the experiential learning at the small clear sky peak, every time Zhu Qin saw Wang Lu, he would tremble with fear. However, this time was different. Once he figured out the relationship between Wang Lu and the wisdom sect, Zhu Qin quickly realized that he had caught Wang Lu's weakness. Even if the Lingjian school's management of the successor disciples was lax, it was impossible for the disciplinary elder to allow his disciples to develop a cult with a scale of more than 1 million people. This matter was obviously Wang Lu's own initiative. He was like the non-Phase Peak's fifth elder who was lawless and proud. However, in the end he was not the fifth elder. Moreover, even the fifth elder was often beaten black and blue by the sect's rules, so how could he, Wang Lu, escape the sect's sanctions? Of course, Zhu Qin didn't have any substantial evidence to prove that Wang Lu was the wisdom sect's sect leader. In fact, the great Ming country's royal family spies could only infiltrate the middle level of the wisdom sect, and they knew nothing about the mysterious sect leader. However, why would Zhu Qin need to prove so much? He just needed to send a letter back to the sect, and the elders would come down the mountain to investigate. Therefore, when he walked out of the imperial city and saw Wang Lu, Zhu Qin's heart was jumping with joy. He inwardly said, "Kid, you also have this day. This time you took the initiative to look for me. Is it because you want me to keep the secret and not report it to the sect's elders? Haha, it stands to reason that we're from the same sect, so I shouldn't hit you when you're down, but who told me to be a model disciple who scrupulously abides by the sect's rules? Hehe, senior brother Wang Lu, I guessed it's you. It just so happens that I also have something to talk to you about." Wang Lu stopped and smiled. "Junior brother, please say it." Zhu Qin coughed and pretended to say, "It's like this, I heard that there's a new cult in the great Ming country, and its development momentum is extremely fast. In just half a year its scale has already exceeded 1 million people." Wang Lu interrupted, "Is it the wisdom sect? I've also heard about it." "Yes, it's the wisdom sect." Zhu Qin clenched his teeth, looked at the calm face of Wang Lu and inwardly said, "Kid, you really know how to pretend. So, what do you want to tell me about the wisdom sect?" Wang Lu seriously and curiously looked at Zhu Qin, as if he really had nothing to do with the wisdom sect. Zhu Qin sneered. "It's like this, I don't know what happened to junior brother Wen Bao, but he actually went to that cult to be an elder. I think his relationship with you has always been very good, so perhaps you know something about it." Wang Lu raised his eyebrows and laughed in spite of himself. "That dead fatty is not my illegitimate child, so what does it have to do with me if he wants to be an elder? Perhaps he's tired of being a soldier on the mountain, so he went down the mountain to experience the thrill of being a leader." Zhu Qin stared at Wang Lu. "In other words, senior brother Wang Lu doesn't know anything about this?" Wang Lu spread out his hands and didn't speak. This kind of indifferent attitude made Zhu Qin particularly annoyed. He originally intended to tease Wang Lu, but it turned out that the one being teased was him? "Fine, no more playing around, let's get straight to the point. I think there's something fishy about this matter, but I can't find anything. For the safety of junior brother Wen Bao, and even more so for the reputation of our Lingjian school, I'm going to write a report to the sect's elders, asking them to come forward and investigate it." As soon as he said this, Zhu Qin's heart felt as if a boulder had fallen down. He had already revealed his cards, so he just wanted to see how Wang Lu would respond. Wang Lu's reaction was just a chuckle. "Junior brother, you want to report to the elders?" "Yes, I'm going to ask the elders to go down the mountain to investigate it, lest some villains use the reputation of the Spirit Sword sect's disciples to commit crimes." Zhu Qin proudly said, but from the corner of his eyes, he saw that Yu Xinyao, who was standing next to Wang Lu, frowned. "Wait a minute, did I do something wrong?" Unfortunately, it was too late for Zhu Qin to think about it. Wang Lu smiled and asked again, "Junior brother Zhu Qin, did you say you want to report to the elders?" "Wait a minute, what does report mean? The difference of one word is 1,000 miles. However, before Zhu Qin could say anything, Wang Lu turned his head and with a compassionate expression said, "Junior sister Yu, junior brother Zhu Qin said he wants to report." Junior sister Yu's brows wrinkled even tighter. Zhu Qin was so angry that he almost vomited blood, thinking, what the f***ck does this have to do with reporting? Can't you listen to other people? "Senior brother Wang Lu, I think you misunderstood, I'm not going to." Wang Lu simply ignored Zhu Qin and just looked at his junior sister Yu. He continued to sigh, "Junior sister Yu, junior brother actually wants to report in front of a girl." Zhu Qin's mind was suddenly in a mess. What the, doing bad things is fine, but doing it in front of a girl, really, what a shame. "You are the one who is ashamed, your whole family is ashamed. Junior sister Yu, I don't remember any elder educating a disciple to be a tattletale, do you remember any?" Yu Xinyao gently shook her head. "Junior sister Yu, do you think this kind of behavior is worth advocating?" Junior sister Yu thought for a long time. "It seems it's not very good. Right, tattletale people are despised, right? This is indeed easy to cause criticism from fellow disciples. Then if your senior sisters and junior sisters know that someone tattletale, will they also look down on him? Well, maybe. Not only senior sister and junior sister. Elder Hua Yun is frank and generous, she should not like tattletale people, right? Yes, Elder Hua Yun is indeed like that. If you are hated by Elder Hua Yun, it will be hard for you to get along in Lingjian school, right? That's true. If you can't get along in Lingjian school, although the Wanxian League is big, I'm afraid there is no place for you to stay. Unfortunately, why do some people have to tattletale? Wang Lu and Yu Xinyao echoed each other happily. Zhu Qin, who was next to them, was about to cry. Your uncle, this is too shameless. This is simply sophistry. However, in the face of junior sister Yu's gentle eyes, he couldn't say something like, I just want to tattletale. Wang Lu, you are too shameless, you actually pulled junior sister Yu here to be your spear. You are 100 times more shameless than tattletale. However, as the saying goes, a shameless person is invincible. In desperation, Zhu Qin had to bow his head. Senior brother, I know I will never tattletale to anyone, so please don't say it again. Wang Lu's smile was even more brilliant. It's a deal. Then he turned to Yu Xinyao and said, let's pack up and leave. Looking at the receding figures of Wang Lu and Yu Xinyao, standing at the gate of the imperial city, Zhu Qin only felt that the wind blowing behind him was particularly sad. Chapter 119. After walking for a long time, Yu Xinyao finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. Senior brother, you're so bad, using such a rogue trick to deal with senior brother Zhu Qin. After listening to Wang Lu's monologue performance just now, Yu Xinyao simply admired him from the bottom of her heart. At the same time, she also understood why senior brother Wang Lu insisted on taking her to find Zhu Qin. Senior brother Wang Lu was simply using her to block Zhu Qin's mouth. It was obviously a robber's logic, but by relying on her existence, Zhu Qin was choked and speechless. This kind of ability to confuse black and white really made people admire him. Thank you, junior sister Yu, for your help. Otherwise it would not be easy to deal with Zhu Qin, this Chinibyu. Yu Xinyao couldn't help but laugh for a while and then immediately asked, but is this okay? Senior brother, if you directly show up like this, it's too risky. Wang Lu sighed, what else can I do? To suppress Zhu Qin, who else can but me? Is it the awakening type Wen Bao? That fatty may be able to make Zhu Qin depressed, but to make Zhu Qin unable to move, only I can personally come forward. Yu Xinyao nodded in approval, but senior brother Zhu Qin can't just stay silent, he certainly won't be willing to be played by you like this. Wang Lu smiled, yes, in a few days, as long as he comes back to his senses and gives himself a reason to convince himself, he will definitely secretly report to the sect's elders. But I only need a few days of time. Junior sister Yu blinked her beautiful eyes and looked at Wang Lu in confusion. In Yu Xinyao's view, Wang Lu's problem was not something that could be solved in a few days. A huge cult with more than 1 million followers was too eye-catching. Once the sect's elders received the report and personally went down the mountain to investigate, Wang Lu, the mastermind behind the scenes, would inevitably be exposed. At that time, the sect's rules would be strict, and a mere 5th elder would absolutely not be able to cover him up. At this time, Yu Xinyao didn't even have the time to consider the role she was playing now, whether she would be implicated or not. She was simply worried about Wang Lu. However, Wang Lu was still full of confidence. Don't worry about the professional adventurers. Junior sister, you just have to wait and see. Is that so? Alright, then I'll be looking forward to your performance, senior brother. Don't expect me. Next, you should be looking forward to Wen Bao's performance. His role is very important. While Wang Lu and Yu Xinyao were happily cooperating to take down Zhu Qin, Wen Bao and his 2 assistants were spending their days in the Mansion of Light. Then, apart from these trivial matters, does Elder Wen have anything else to say? In the main hall, Li Nana sat upright on the main seat. She held a cup of fragrant tea in her hand and took a light sip. Her posture was elegant, yet it was difficult to conceal the impatience and coldness between her brows. Wen Bao, who was sitting next to Li Nana, was already drenched in cold sweat. Tremblingly, he fished out a handkerchief from his mustard seed bag, wiped his sweat, and then squeezed out a seemingly meaningful smile without saying a word. Although the 2 assistants sitting next to him were usually proactive, at this time, they were shrinking in their chairs, not daring to move, which made the scene even colder. The 3 of them were embarrassed because the aura of this Miss Li Nana of the Mansion of Light was too strong. Although her cultivation base was only at the foundation establishment stage, and although she looked like a tall but slightly thin young woman, Her speech and demeanor revealed a spirit that was not inferior to men, which made the three men ashamed. After wiping the sweat from his forehead, the smile on Wen Bao's face gradually stiffened. Especially in the face of Li Nana's increasingly impatient eyes, he really wanted to die, which was better than suffering in this main hall. A day ago, his senior brother said that this level of negotiation could not be finished in 1 or 2 days, and that he only needed to pick up some leftover information related to the wisdom sect. But in fact, how could it be that simple? After a few minutes of talking about the so-called leftover information, the other party became impatient. Then he avoided these meaningless topics and began to interrogate endlessly. Who is your sect master? Although you boast to your followers that you are a true immortal, you are at most a shoot-on-stage cultivator, right? The first question made Wen Bao have no choice but to take out his magic weapon, a meaningful smile. But just as he finished his expression, Qian Hu put down her teacup and said coldly, "What, you can't say it? Interesting. Can't your identity be exposed?" Wen Bao smiled. "You're the one who proposed to cooperate with the Mansion of Light, but now you're not even willing to reveal the identity of the sect's leader. Aren't you being too insincere?" Wen Bao's heart trembled on the spot as he turned around to seek help from his 2 assistants. Unexpectedly, the 2 of them were even more unbearable. They didn't even dare to raise their heads. Fortunately, Qin Huna shook her head and changed the topic. "I can't tell you about the hierarch's identity, so let's talk about you. Did you come from the Lingjian school? Then when you joined the wisdom sect, what was the sect's attitude toward this? Was it happy to see it happen?" Wen Bao's heart skipped a beat. How could he dare to tell her the truth? He just continued to smile. Qin Huna's frown deepened. "You can't tell me this? Fine, let's change to another one." Then, even after several more questions, it was still the same. This Qin Huna's questions were too sharp. Each one of them was aimed at the sect's secret. Moreover, her attitude was straightforward, giving people no chance to be perfunctory. Wen Bao felt as if he just took a bath. His face had a tendency to cramp. At the same time, Qin Huna's annoyance continued to accumulate. The woman put down the teacup. Her fingers constantly tapped on the armrest. After a moment of silence, she asked another question. "Rumor has it that your wisdom sect instigates your followers to cultivate the heaven-burning blood technique. Is this true?" Wen Bao was about to cry, but he still maintained his smile, which was as awkward as it could be. Qin Huna's eyes were sharp. Her body slightly leaned forward, and her imposing manner was overbearing. "Don't want to say it? Then I'll take it as you acquiesce?" Wen Bao was so anxious that he almost peed in his pants. Inwardly, he had already rained dog blood curses on Wang Lu. In the past, he was cheated by Wang Lu, but this time he was embarrassed in front of this cold-looking woman. An indescribable sense of humiliation suddenly rose in Wen Bao's heart. Damn it, why do I have to suffer this kind of punishment? I'm just a small infrastructure department head, good at moving bricks. You can do this kind of difficult work yourself, why do you have to torture me? Moreover, it was done in front of her. The fat youth was full of anxiety. He didn't even realize that in his impression, the woman's position was different. A moment later, Wen Bao suddenly saw the opposite Qin Huna. A trace of disappointment flashed through his eyes. It was not because of the wisdom sect's sincerity, but because of Wen Bao. Wen Bao was puzzled. What? If there is expectation, there will be disappointment. What's there to expect from me? I'm just a... Suddenly, an impulse rose in Wen Bao's heart, which made him feel as if something exploded in his brain. The next moment, under Li Nana's surprised gaze, Wen Bao slowly straightened his body and then said, "The matter about the heaven-burning blood technique is pure nonsense." Li Nana froze for a moment. She watched as the cowering snow on Wen Bao's face melted and was replaced by a symbol of indifference and calmness. The woman couldn't help but laugh. Pure nonsense. Yes, my wisdom sect does have a unique cultivation method that can speed up people's cultivation, but that cultivation method is upright, absolutely not a devil's cultivation method. I'm afraid it's just some jealous villain spreading false information to ruin my wisdom sect's clean reputation. Li Nana's smile became thicker. Good, if that's the case, then that's the best. Otherwise, even if you put forward the best conditions, our Mansion of Light will never cooperate with a cult. Wen Bao was startled. Looking at the smiling face of Qin Huna, he finally understood the problem. Li Nana didn't need the truth, she only needed a plausible explanation. However, he couldn't even think about it before wasting his time. No wonder the other side was disappointed. Thus, the next question and answer session finally went smoothly. "You came from Lingjian School, what's the sect's opinion on this?" Wen Bao said with a smile, We don't encourage it nor oppose it. The Lingjian school's policy of training disciples is to have a high degree of autonomy. As long as it doesn't violate the bottom line, anything is a very helpful experience in the immortal cultivation path. Even if it's cooperation with secular institutions? The distinction between immortal and mortal is not absolute. At least, Lingjian school has never had such a division. Our sect leader's daughter is still running an inn in the mortal world. Linana was really surprised. There's such a thing? That's really unexpected. Then who is your sect leader? Wen Bao said, although he's not a true immortal, he's better than a true immortal. From the wisdom sect's development, you can see his extraordinariness, right? Oh, you said you want to cooperate, so what exactly can you provide? A deep and solid foundation among the masses, rich immortal cultivation resources, and a promising high-quality partner. So what do you need? Wen Bao froze for a moment, clenched his teeth, and then made a presumptuous guess. The official recognition from the great Ming country. One question and one answer. Time quickly slipped away. Unknowingly, outside the window, the sun had already set. After putting down the tea that had already been filled with water, Linana nodded with satisfaction. Today's conversation is very pleasant. Wen Bao heaved a sigh of relief, but his mouth actually said, I feel the same way. Then let me ask one last question. Wen Bao's spirit rose. Please say it. Yesterday you said you like me, is that true? Wen Bao spurted out his tea on the spot. His clothes were full of tea. Linana looked at Wen Bao's embarrassment with interest, and then she smiled and shook her head. It's just a joke, don't take it to heart. Tomorrow is still the same time, please prepare more materials for the details of the cooperation. Personally, I'm happy to see it happen. With that, the woman stood up. Send the guests out. Thereupon, several servants entered the hall and asked Wen Bao and his two assistants to leave. Before going out, Wen Bao looked back at the woman's graceful back. His heart felt lost. Chapter 120. When he walked out of the Mansion of Light, he intended to go directly back to the inn, but he saw Wang Lu and Yu Xinyao waiting side by side in the shadow of a corner. Wen Bao hurriedly sent away his two assistants and quickly stepped forward. Wang Lu looked at the remaining blank expression on Wen Bao's face and said with a playful smile, Fatty, sure enough, when winter comes, spring is not far away. Yu Xinyao covered her mouth and chuckled. Wen Bao bowed his head in embarrassment. When he saw the smile on Yu Xinyao's face, his heart felt sour. How is the negotiation going? Speaking of business, Wen Bao also restrained some of the thoughts in his heart and seriously repeated the process. Wang Lu patted the fatty's shoulder. Good, you really didn't disappoint? Wen Bao shook his head in frustration. It's all based on the foundation laid by senior brother. The other party actually wanted to cooperate, I just pushed the boat along with the current, there's nothing worth mentioning. Pushing the boat along with the current is also a skill, at least the other party is willing to let you push, this is not easy. After being in contact with Wang Lu for a long time, Wen Bao could hear the ridicule in the other party's words. He couldn't help but be embarrassed. Senior brother is joking, there's no such thing. It doesn't matter, sooner or later there will be. Since she has made an appointment to continue the negotiation tomorrow, you should prepare well tonight and work hard tomorrow to make the favorable impression on her go up another level. Wen Bao was surprised. Senior brother, are you going to wash your hands of this? Otherwise, do you want to die? Wang Lu spread out his hands, since you talked well with the other party today, you should continue to work hard. Casually changing people in the negotiation process is like changing the profession of a writer, facing great risks. This is not the same as what we agreed at the beginning. Wang Lu patted Wen Bao's shoulder. Then keep up with the times. This? Seeing that Wen Bao was still uneasy, Wang Lu at least seriously explained, at this stage you are the best candidate to negotiate with that Qian Hu, because no matter what the result is, there will be room for mediation. You still have me behind you, and Linana still has the great Ming country's imperial court. Secondly, Linana and I both have the temperament to attack. When two attacks meet, there will definitely be a setback. However, we are here to negotiate, not to fight or to be turned gay. So, at this time, we need a fatty like you to come forward and ease the atmosphere. Look at you, you did very well today. Wen Bao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. We almost lost our sovereignty and humiliated our country. The first time is just a little shaky. In the future, when you get used to it, the thrill will gradually come. Moreover, even if you lose your country's sovereignty, you still have me, the cult master, to back you up. What are you afraid of? The last and most important reason is that Qian Hu likes you a lot. You have to make good use of your favorability. Wen Bao said helplessly, "Senior brother, which eye of yours saw that she likes me? Otherwise, why do you think you haven't lost your sovereignty and humiliated your country?" Wen Bao was taken aback. No matter how Wen Bao argued, in the end he couldn't shirk this task. Wang Lu mercilessly put the heavy responsibility of negotiation on Wen Bao's shoulders, and then disappeared without a trace. Yu Xinyao without a doubt followed Wang Lu. Therefore Wen Bao had to fight alone with loneliness and sorrow. However, in the next 2 days, the negotiation with Li Nana was not as difficult as he imagined. Li Nana's character was indeed strong. During the negotiation she interfered countless times, making Wen Bao break out in cold sweat. He was extremely embarrassed, but every crisis was more frightening than dangerous. Li Nana gave Wen Bao enough room to maneuver so that he wouldn't be too embarrassed. Perhaps it was because her willingness to cooperate was very strong, or perhaps it was because she really had a perverted aesthetic that she would like a fat teenager like Wen Bao. However, Wen Bao simply had no time to think about these trivial details. Representing the Wisdom sect to negotiate with the Mansion of Light took up all of his energy. There were too many problems that needed to be solved, and the conflicts of interest that needed to be disputed were innumerable. So much so that in these 2 days, Wen Bao and Li Nana did not rest for even a moment. They talked all night long until he, a 7th-level Qi cultivating stage cultivator, who had reached the body forging stage, had a dry mouth and blisters. 2 days later, the final result of the negotiation was revealed, which was quite gratifying. The Mansion of Light had so far obtained the most powerful support at the grassroots level. The Wisdom sect's powerful network of more than 1 million followers would be used by them. As the person in charge of the Mansion of Light, Li Nana enjoyed the same authority as the Wisdom sect's vice-sect leader. First of all, she could freely read the sect's information. Except for a few parts that were classified as top secret by Wang Lu, the rest were completely open to her. For Li Nana, the value of this alone was immeasurable. Not to mention the vice-sect leader's authority was far more than this. As long as she wanted, she could order the followers to carry out large-scale construction, or collect resources. Of course, the Wisdom sect's harvest was not small. The most important point was that the Mansion of Light was willing to provide the Wisdom sect with the Great Ming country's official qualification certification. Using the authority of a vice-sect leader in exchange for the Great Ming country's official recognition seemed to be a big loss, but in fact, for the current Wisdom sect, the official certification was the most important part. With it, the Wisdom sect could boldly develop from the countryside to the prefectural city. In fact, until the two sides reached the cooperation agreement, the Wisdom sect was an out-and-out cult. Developing in the Great Ming country's territory, but without the Great Ming country's approval, and without the registration of the Wanxian League. If this wasn't a cult, then what was? It was actually jackals of the same tribe as the Seven-Star sect. However, now that they had the Mansion of Light's approval, the Wisdom sect had transformed into a legal sect, impressively whitewashed. Even if they wanted to develop followers in the prefectural city or even the capital, they could still confidently do so. And for the current Wisdom sect, this could be said to be crucial. Although the number of followers was more than 1 million, and the momentum of development was still rapid, the bottleneck of the Wisdom sect was actually not far away. Almost all of the remote villages in the Great Ming country had been covered by the Wisdom sect, and some of the smaller counties had already fallen into the enemy's hands. In the eyes of many sects, these areas were not worth paying attention to. As for those rich counties and even prefectural cities, the Wisdom sect still didn't have the qualification to touch them. If they didn't touch them, that would be fine, but if they did, it would be troublesome. As for developing in other countries, it was even more unreliable. Not everyone could be like the Great Ming country, who turned a blind eye to the immortal cultivation sect. The tangled attitude of the Great Ming country's imperial court toward the cultivators was actually a good soil for the rapid development of the Wisdom sect. Now that they had the permission from the Mansion of Light, the Wisdom sect's only bottleneck was no longer there. In the future, the explosive development could also be foreseen. Therefore, after negotiating the cooperation, Wen Bao was extremely excited. That same night, he and his 2 assistants drank until they were dead drunk. With his cultivation, the mortal world's fine wine was almost useless to him. The dead fatty, on the other hand, drank several hundred spirit stones in one night, extremely extravagant. Early the next morning, Wen Bao felt a splitting headache. If a small amount of wine that was full of spiritual energy was drunk, not only could it make people relaxed and happy, it could also increase their cultivation level. However, excessive drinking would injure one's primordial spirit. Wen Bao now felt that his primordial spirit, which was initially condensed, showed signs of dispersing. Perhaps, it would be difficult to recover without 3 to 5 days of recuperation. However, the 2 days and nights of negotiations were tiring, and even Qian Hu, who was in the foundation establishment stage, was physically and mentally exhausted. Since they had agreed to discuss the next step of the cooperation in 3 days, they still had enough time to rest. Coming out of the guest room, Wen Bao let out a long yawn and was ready to take a stroll around the city. First, he had nothing to do, and second, he wanted to investigate. In the future, the Wisdom Sect would inevitably set up a branch in the Great Ming country's capital. As the head of the infrastructure department, he would inevitably be busy, so it was not a bad thing to prepare in advance. However, before he could walk out of the inn's door, Wen Bao's heart suddenly jumped. His primordial spirit in his inner mansion trembled, as if a great horror was about to befall him. The next moment, a majestic voice sounded in his primordial spirit. Wen Bao. This voice was too familiar. In many nightmares, this voice was always the protagonist. Wen Bao immediately felt his chest tighten. Third martial uncle? Chapter 121. Wen Bao was an inner disciple of Lingjian school and was under the tutelage of the second elder of Misty Peak, Lu Xian. His third martial uncle was naturally the third elder of the sect, disciplinary elder Fang He. In Wang Lu's words, it was senior officer Ji. Lu Xian was an out-and-out strict teacher. During his 2 years of training in the Mountain Gate, Wen Bao had been scolded many times. But compared to Lu Xian's scolding, the disciplinary elder's scolding was undoubtedly much more frightening. At this time, hearing Fang He's voice, Wen Bao trembled like a sieve. Return to your guest room. Your master and I are both there. Wen Bao wanted to escape 1,000 times, but in the end he returned to the guest room, trembling. When he opened the door, his vision went dark. Not only master and third martial uncle, but even fifth martial uncle was also present. However, compared to Lu Xian and Fang He, who were sitting upright and still with a serious and angry look on their faces, Wang Wu's posture was much more relaxed. As soon as he saw her, he greeted her with a smile. This autumn fat is quite generous. It was early winter, and the season to put on autumn fat had already passed a few months ago. Moreover, he had been working hard as the head of the infrastructure department for the past few months, and he had almost lost a lot of weight. At this time, hearing fifth martial uncle's teasing, Wen Bao forced out a smile. Fifth junior sister, don't talk about irrelevant topics. Fang He coldly interrupted, and then looked at Wen Bao sternly. Do you know why your master and I are here? Wen Bao stared blankly for a moment, then nodded helplessly. The elder had come personally. Was he still afraid that he would quibble? Confess and be lenient? Thereupon, he told the whole story of how he joined the Wisdom Sect. From capturing the dirty old man in the Marquis County to talking with Qian Hu through the night 2 days ago, he almost told her everything. Except for the sensitive heaven-burning blood technique, he didn't hold back anything else. This was one of Wen Bao Shui's cleverness. If it was a cultivator of the younger generation who came down from the mountain, he might have to try and deal with him. However, in front of a strict and upright elder, any little tricks would be suicidal. Since they were willing to listen to him, it meant that there was still a chance for things to turn around. Sure enough, after listening to Wen Bao's words, Lu Xian and Fang He did not immediately fly into a rage. They just silently nodded, but their complexions became even more gloomy. Only the fifth elder was still carefree. Little fatty, you're really good. You're actually a dignified divisional cadre now. Sure enough, the cadre of a large organization is promoted quickly. As soon as she finished speaking, Lu Xian finally couldn't hold back his anger. Fifth junior sister, you're still talking nonsense. You also understood what Wen Bao said just now. Zhu Qin's report was not false. Your precious disciple has indeed caused a huge disaster. The fifth elder blinked. Really? Still playing dumb? What's going on with that damn Wisdom Sect? The fifth elder continued to blink. I think this is a typical entrepreneurial behavior. The workers mainly rely on their own capital, resources, information, technology, experience, and other factors to establish their own industries and solve the employment problem. By establishing the Wisdom Sect, Wang Lu has successfully set off a wave of immortal cultivation in the Great Ming country, solving the employment problem of millions of people. I think the sect should commend and encourage him and also give me, his master, 2 levels of subsidy. Before he finished, Lu Xian was so angry that he slammed the table without a care for his image. *T. The fifth elder was surprised. Here. That's not good. Boss. Elder Lu Xian's sword chi suddenly bloomed. It looked like he was about to start practicing. Fang He sighed and stretched out his hand to stop Lu Xian. Senior brother, please calm down. Our main task is not to blame fifth junior sister, but to find the person involved. Then he turned around and asked Wen Bao, do you have a way to contact your senior brother Wang Lu? Wen Bao replied, I used to, but I just used the psychic jade 2 days ago, so now I can't contact him. Lu Xian thought for a moment. Do you know where he went? Wen Bao thought for a moment, shook his head and said, I really don't know. What about him? Junior sister, you followed him. You Xinyao? Fang He's brows deeply wrinkled. That child has always been steady, how could she be together with Wang Lu? Lu Xian coldly snorted. She was incited. You Xinyao, that child after all, doesn't have much experience, and Wang Lu's mouth is even better than his master's. The fifth elder sneered. Better than my master? Second senior brother, you look down on me too much. Lu Xian ignored her. Since we know he's with you Xinyao, then let junior sister Hua Yin find him. Then he pointed his finger forward, and a circle of ripples appeared in the space. In the middle of the ripples, Hua Yun's face gradually emerged. Hey senior brother, you're looking for me? Hua Yun looked surprised. Help me find you Xinyao. Lu Xian made a long story short and Hua Yun didn't ask why. After nodding, she closed her eyes and opened them, and then she got the answer. She's not far from you. You should know after using your primordial spirit to scan. After that, her small face showed a bit of curiosity. Are you playing a human game? Of course, Lu Xian was not in the mood to play any game. After hearing Hua Yun's answer, his face was startled. He immediately used his primordial spirit to scan, and sure enough, he found Yu Xinyao's unique magical power fluctuation. Of course, beside Yu Xinyao, he also caught a faint but unusually clear magical power fluctuation. It was Wang Lu. With the strength of Lu Xian's primordial spirit, if he really used his full strength to scan, the entire Great Ming country wouldn't be able to escape from his divine sense. However, if he rashly used his primordial spirit to scan in a foreign country, it would be quite disrespectful to the local cultivators, and might even affect some people's cultivation. Therefore, unless the situation was urgent, Lu Xian would not use too much of his primordial spirit. Therefore, when he was looking for someone, he could only ask the sect elders who were connected to the primordial spirit of the disciples. Of course, the fifth elder also came for this reason. Unfortunately, the fifth elder did not cooperate at all. Fortunately, in the end she was found, and it was Wang Lu who delivered himself to the door. Not long after, Wang Lu entered the room, and Yu Xinyao, who was next to him, very obediently stood to the side. She was just a spectator of what happened next. Seeing Wang Lu, Fang He suddenly couldn't sit still. He stood up and said, Wang Lu, do you know your mistake? Wang Lu was inexplicably stunned for a long time, then he bowed his head and said, Disciple's mistake is that I am too outstanding, making the other junior brothers and sisters look dim and dull, making them lose the motivation to continue to move forward on the road of immortal cultivation. Hearing this, Fang He almost slashed his sword to kill this rebellious disciple. Fifth junior sister, look, this is the good disciple you have taught. Fifth junior sister nodded her head in relief. Not bad, neither servile nor overbearing, he has my style. Not servile nor overbearing, Fang He's hair stood up in anger, his primordial spirit was agitated, he was almost angered to death by this fellow. However, seeing that the fifth junior sister had made up her mind to cover up for Wang Lu, there was nothing more to say to her. Fifth junior sister, you can leave now. Hey, so early? You haven't eaten lunch yet. Get lost. The fifth junior sister had to resentfully leave, leaving only the 2 elders and 3 disciples in the room. Disciplinary elder Fang He looked at Wang Lu up and down, and he couldn't help but sigh. You are an extremely intelligent child, why did you do such a thing? Wang Lu earnestly asked, May I ask uncle, what did I do wrong? Fang He was silent for a moment. After he was sure that Wang Lu didn't want to continue his jesting, he was actually questioning him. He couldn't help but be somewhat annoyed. You established a cult in the mortal world, yet you ask me what did I do wrong? Wang Lu firmly retorted, Wisdom sect is not a cult, uncle, please examine it clearly. Fang He slapped the table. Absurd. Everything you did in the Great Ming country, Zhu Qin has written a report and sent it back to the sect. Now, I'll let you see if there is anything wrong with it. A letter appeared out of thin air in Wang Lu's hand. Wang Lu, as expected, pinched it and shook it toward Yu Xinyao. The young girl bowed her head and smiled, thinking that her senior brother's prediction was indeed correct. Zhu Qin's report was meticulous. It described the development process of the wisdom sect in the past 8 months. There was no embellishment, nor was there any baseless framing. This kind of boring trick would only reduce his position in the elders' hearts. Moreover, why would Wang Lu's actions need to be embellished? After reading the report, Wang Lu asked, when the sect arranged this experiential learning, did it prohibit the disciples from establishing their own sect? Although my cultivation is shallow, establishing a sect is not prohibited by the sect's rules. Fang He frowned and was about to speak, but Lu Xian, who personally planned this experiential learning, could not help but angrily said, the sect arranged this experiential learning in order to let you increase your experience and enhance your cultivation, not to mislead people with lies and exorbitant taxes. You're just a qi cultivating stage cultivator, far from being anxious to accumulate wealth. I really didn't expect that the usually opinionated person like you would actually be dazzled by the world of mortals. Is the non-phase peak really that poor? Wang Lu chuckled. Rest assured, uncle, although the non-phase peak is poor, disciples' ambition has never been poor. The purpose of this experiential learning has never been forgotten. Although the profit of my wisdom sect is good, disciple has never taken a penny from it. Thus, disciple is not trying to amass wealth by establishing a sect. Uncle, please examine this matter clearly. Upon hearing Wang Lu's words, Lu Xian snorted. Even if it's not for wealth, it's still the same for power. Wang Lu didn't deny this point. Although in the Lingjian school he was a successor disciple, and his status was relatively aloof, but compared to the wisdom sect leader, whose words could move millions of people, they couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. The chaotic world of mortals is the best place to temper people's heart. The reason I sent you down the mountain is to let you be untainted by the mud, not to let you sink into the world of mortals. However, before the elder could finish his lecture, Wang Lu rudely interrupted him. Disciple has never indulged in power and wealth. In these 8 months, disciple has been cultivating non-stop, and my cultivation has made great progress. With that, he took the initiative to release the magical power fluctuation of a level 6 Qi cultivating stage cultivator. Although in front of a Yuaning stage cultivator, it was like a drop in the ocean, compared to the other 2 disciples in the room, this cultivation speed was already excellent. However, upon seeing this, Lu Xian snorted. Wang Lu, don't forget your identity. You're not an ordinary inner court disciple, you're the sect's successor disciple. You're already complacent with just a level 6 Qi cultivating stage? Do you know, even if you're not compared to the other successor disciples, even among the disciples who entered the sect at the same time as you, your cultivation is not the highest. Wang Lu was neither servile nor overbearing. If I remember correctly, it's uncle who taught the disciples not to blindly believe in the cultivation stage. Although disciples' cultivation stage is not high, disciples' strength is valiant, absolutely not comparable to those junior brothers and sisters who relied on fortuitous encounters to increase their cultivation stage. Uncle, please examine this clearly. This high-sounding and shameless speech made Lu Xian speechless for a whole incense stick worth of time. Although before he went down the mountain, he already knew that this child Wang Lu had been tormented by his master. At this time, he found out that he still underestimated his stubbornness. Not to mention anything else, just his attitude toward his uncle was already irritating. Especially the nearby disciplinary elder, Fang He, who was glaring at him. In his mind, he quickly calculated how many sect rules Wang Lu had violated. You've been a sect leader in the mortal world for too long. Your ego has inflated to the point that you've lost your mind. Wang Lu laughed. Whether or not I'm losing my mind and boasting, in fact, uncle only needs to test me. Disciple is bold enough to ask uncle to bestow me with a sword. As soon as he said this, the entire room was shocked. Chapter 122. What sword do you want me to give you? Lu Xian's face was solemn as he asked in a deep voice. Wang Lu replied, the sword of truth. Lu Xian slightly frowned, his stern eyes examined Wang Lu for a long time, and finally nodded slowly, you want to prove your innocence? Well, I agree. Lu Xian had just nodded when Fang He hesitated, senior brother, this is against the rules. Lu Xian snorted, I know, a Qi cultivating stage disciple running to a Yuanying stage elder to ask for the sword of truth is indeed shocking, but since it is his request, the sect's rules do not stipulate that it cannot be done. But the sword of truth requires the use of the misty immortal heart, even if it is only a little bit, it is not something that a Qi cultivating stage cultivator can bear. The so-called sword of truth was a rule that many sects had. When a person could not defend himself, he could ask the elders of the sect to give him the sword of truth. The elder would use the immortal heart to control the sword, and the sword would ask the heart. If the disciple could block the elder's sword, then he would not be able to prove himself. Of course, this sword was so powerful that it was not easy to block. The fierceness of the sword of truth did not lie in how strong the strength of the sword user was or how sharp the sword intent was, but the power of the immortal heart contained in the sword could directly interrogate the primordial spirit. Ask if you have a guilty conscience in your heart? If you do, this sword will directly penetrate your heart, break your primordial spirit, and make you collapse without a fight. If you have a clear conscience, even if the sword of truth changed the color of heaven and earth, and the mountains collapsed, it would only be a breeze. But it was easier said than done for a person to have a clear conscience. Even if it was an innocent person, every little thing in life could make them feel guilty, such as being a little lazy during cultivation or talking about someone behind their back with other disciples. Even if it had nothing to do with the question, the guilt in their heart would not be able to hide from the sword of truth and would become a huge flaw. Of course, the sword of truth would also leave some leeway so that the disciple could use their own cultivation level and sword techniques to offset some of the power, so that even if there was a little guilt in their heart, they could barely withstand it. Therefore, even though the sword of truth was not 100% accurate, it was still able to avoid a lot of grievances. Therefore, many sects kept the sword of truth. It's just that if you search the entire Wanxian League, you might not be able to find a few Qi cultivating stage cultivators who would dare to ask for the sword of truth. Because to a Qi condensation cultivator, those methods that could counteract the power simply couldn't be used. Cultivating Qi mainly cultivated the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and cultivated one's own magical power. The cultivation of primordial spirit was mainly done after the foundation establishment stage. Of course, it didn't mean that Qi cultivating cultivators didn't need to focus on their primordial spirit. However, even if Yu Xinyao was able to advance her primordial spirit very quickly in actual combat, unless it was coordinated with a formation, it wouldn't have much effect. Of course, Yu Xinyao didn't pursue actual combat ability. Her cultivation plan was tailor-made for herself, it had its own purpose. In Fang He's view, Wang Lu, a middle-level Qi cultivating stage cultivator, asking for the sword of truth, was simply asking for trouble. Fang He asked, "Do you think your non-phase method's defensive power is strong enough to withstand the sword of truth?" Wang Lu replied, "Disciple doesn't dare to be so arrogant. Therefore, martial uncle, please set this sword for 3 days later." 3 days later? Correct. Disciple needs 3 days to prepare before I can receive this sword. Lu Xian sneered. You want to play tricks to delay the time? Wang Lu said, I don't dare. Disciple will arrange everything in the Wisdom Sect's headquarters, martial uncle can rest assured. Wisdom Sect's headquarters, Wang family village? Very well, I'm leaving. Half of Lu Xian's heart was impatient, and the other half was curious. The calmness that Wang Lu showed right now was not fake. In his life, Lu Xian had seen countless people. How could he not see whether Wang Lu was really confident or just bluffing? However, with his Qi cultivating stage cultivation base, how could he receive his sword of truth? With his immature sect, which was established by mortals and 6 harmonies cultivators, what kind of powerful arrangement could he have? 3 days? Let alone 3 days, even if he was given 3 years, unless he could cultivate his Jade Mansion and advance from Qi cultivating stage to foundation establishment stage. Otherwise, no matter how he arranged, the sword of truth would be like a natural moat. In fact, for the vast majority of cultivators in the immortal cultivation world, even if they were in the Shudan stage, the sword of truth was still difficult to solve, even if they were really innocent. Wang Lu, with his Qi cultivating stage cultivation base, vainly attempted to reach the Shudan stage. Did he think he had the brilliant sword heart? With a sneer, Lu Xian picked up Wang Lu with one hand and turned into a golden sword light, flying straight toward the Wang family village. Fang He shook his head, turned into a sword light and followed his senior brother. As for Wen Bao and Yu Xinyao who were left in the room, they looked at each other in dismay, not knowing what to do. The fat man didn't even care about his worries in front of junior sister Yu, he just asked, Junior sister, what did senior brother do these past few days? Yu Xinyao said with a smile, You're asking the wrong person. In those 2 days I didn't follow senior brother. After leaving the city, I followed his people to run around, signed a lot of documents and met a lot of people. But as for the specific things, to be honest, I'm still confused. As for senior brother himself, there's no need to say anything. So mysterious? Wen Bao was taken aback. It seemed like his senior brother had seriously arranged everything. However, in the face of the menacing second elder and third elder, even if he arranged a lot, could he really come back from the dead? Instead of asking me, it's better to ask the fifth elder. She should know more about Wang Lu than anyone else. When Bao went to the first floor of the inn and found the fifth elder who was drinking and eating meat, the woman just smiled. Rest assured, nothing will happen. Listening to the fifth elder, Bao suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. But then, even if Wang Lu is captured by old man Fang and put in confinement for 10,000 years, as long as I claim that I have no knowledge of this matter, it won't implicate me. Bao was surprised. Fifth martial ant, you said nothing will happen, don't tell me. Of course nothing will happen to me. What does Wang Lu's life or death have to do with me? He started his own business in the Great Ming country and earned a lot of money, but he never sent me a single spirit stone. Using the body and sword unity technique of a Yuanying stage cultivator, he only spent the time it took to burn a stick of incense to fly from the capital of the Great Ming country to the remote Wang family village of the Dog-Ear Mountain. However, when he flew over the Wang family village, Lu Xian couldn't help but be startled. What entered his field of vision was not a barren mountain village that could be seen everywhere, nor was it a symbol of the evil sect's extravagant palace. With the Wang family village as the center, there were several hundred miles of spiritual fields. In the fields grew all kinds of spiritual grasses and elixirs. Although the grade was not high, it was obvious that they had been carefully taken care of, and their growth was gratifying. What was even rarer was that, although the spiritual energy here was not particularly rich, it was extremely well utilized. Almost every bit of it was not wasted. It was evenly and methodically distributed all over the mountain. And in the middle of the Wang family village, there was a strange altar, which was like a heart that triggered the spiritual energy tide, providing the entire village and the surrounding spiritual fields with an endless supply of spiritual energy. Not bad. After looking at it from the air for a while, even though Lu Xian disapproved of Wang Lu's waste of energy to run the evil sect, he had to admit that the management of this evil sect's headquarters was really good. Although it couldn't be compared to the big sects, it was not much worse than those rank 9 sections. Wang Lu smiled and explained, although the Wang family village is the birthplace of the wisdom sect, its condition is not particularly good, therefore the scale of its development is limited. However, after my adjustment, the geomancy of this place has changed. In less than 50 years, the spiritual energy along the feng shui line will be more and more abundant, and this place will become a real paradise. After looking at it for a while, Lu Xian nodded in agreement with Wang Lu's statement. The spiritual energy in the 9 regions was not constant, the total amount was conserved, and the spiritual energy along the feng shui line was also the same. It's not that if you have more, I have less, and if you have less, I have more. As long as it was properly managed, the spiritual energy environment of a place could be improved, from an ordinary place to a place with good geomancy. The Shengjing sect in the central region, where the Shengjing sect was located thousands of years ago, was just a plain that could be seen everywhere in the 9 regions. Of course, in this world there were no ideals to speak of. Most of the time, even the cultivators who were supposed to be detached were more accustomed to plundering. In any case, the 9 regions was so big that even if they plunder for a lifetime, they would never be able to exhaust it. Therefore, in Lu Xian's view, the wisdom sect was obviously just a cult, and Wang Lu's experiential learning time was obviously only 1 year, yet he was willing to make this kind of long-term plan. It was really hard to believe that he was really doing this for power or money. Thinking to this, Lu Xian asked, "You want me to come here to show off your achievement?" Having said that, he continued to look at the Wang family village. There was quite a bit of admiration in his eyes. Wang Lu said with a smile, "In addition to the altar in the middle of the village, there's really nothing worth showing off in the Wang family village. There are at least a dozen of such villages in the wisdom sect. This place, after all, has poor innate conditions, so the layout is limited." Lu Xian snorted and didn't let Wang Lu continue to show off. "Just focus on your arrangement, I'll give you 3 days. Third junior brother and I will watch over here. You can arrange whatever you want as long as you don't leave the radius of 50 kilometers. Wang Lu didn't say much. Soon, he found the wisdom sect's higher-ups in the village and quickly began his own arrangement. Just like what Lu Xian thought, with his qi cultivating stage, even if it was the combination of non-phase method and void spirit root, in theory it was just a fantasy. Thus, the key to going against the heaven was naturally the arrangement in these 3 days. Wang Lu's arrangement was extraordinary. For the Wang family village, it was simply a big move that could change the heaven and earth. If Wang Lu hadn't notified the wisdom sect's higher-ups in advance a few days ago and made the corresponding manpower and material arrangement, it would be too late for Wang Lu's plan to be realized. However, even so, with the wisdom sect's current strength, it was still quite difficult to meet Wang Lu's requirements. The higher-ups of the sect were urgently summoned to the village a day ago and began to work frantically to prepare for the early stage. When Wang Lu personally arrived and announced the plan, those vice-sect leaders and elders who were accustomed to the rapid development of the wisdom sect and the construction of miracles simply stared their eyes out. Yi Chuchen, who could be called Wang Lu's most capable assistant, softly whispered, "Sect leader, the amount of work is too huge. Let's not talk about the technical difficulties, just the investment of resources. Brother Yi, do you want to admit that you're incompetent and can't complete the sect leader's task?" At this time, the one who spoke was another vice-sect leader of the wisdom sect, Taoist Ming Yun. This Taoist was quite a famous loose cultivator in the immortal cultivation world of the Blue River region. His cultivation base was low-level Shudan stage, and his character was somewhat crazy. His conduct was neither good nor evil, which gave many people a headache. 5 months ago, Taoist Ming Yun came uninvited. At that time, Yi Chuchen thought that he came to challenge the sect and was taken aback. However, he found out that this person actually came because of the sect's reputation and applied to join the sect. Thus, he was even more surprised. As for whose name he admired? Nonsense, of course it was the name of the sect leader Wang Lu. Wang Lu didn't know what kind of demonic method this Taoist Ming Yun cultivated, which caused his primordial spirit to distort. Obviously, he was a Shudan stage expert, yet he admired Wang Lu, a mere qi cultivating stage cultivator. Soon Wang Lu became his loyal lackey. Wang Lu was also impolite and directly promoted him to be the vice-sect leader, in charge of fighting and other matters. Taoist Ming Yun's cultivation base was slightly lower than Yi Chuchen's, but his actual combat ability was several times higher. He was a real gold medal fighter. Therefore, when he heard Taoist Ming Yun's words, Yi Chuchen felt a headache. This guy was crazy. Except for Wang Lu's words, he didn't listen to anyone. He simply couldn't be reasoned with, and he often spoke malicious words. In the sect, he was a first-class villain. On the drawing, more than 300 9th-rank gathering spirit arrays were interlocked to form the skeleton, and more than 68th-rank gathering spirit arrays were connected to each other, together forming the main body. In addition, the Tranquil Spirit Lamp, Pure Heart Pagoda, Spirit Awakening Hall, hundreds of different buildings were located in the middle of the array, forming a wonderful connection with each other. Although the grade of these buildings was not high, under the ingenious design, they could display an incredible effect. At the same time, in these 3 days, Lu Xian and Fang He quietly hid in the sky, silently watching Wang Lu's arrangement. Then they witnessed the fanatical followers of the wisdom sect, in just 3 days, build a city in the middle of the mountain. Of course, it was not a big city. The open space between the mountains was not vast, but these hundreds of buildings, as well as the densely packed array circles, were more than the amount of work needed to build a city. To be able to complete all of this in 3 days, the wisdom sect used no less than 30,000 people. This was the result of the sect's unscrupulous recruitment of all the people in the surrounding area. Among them, there were more than 1,000 qi cultivating stage cultivators. At the same time, the wisdom sect also hired hundreds of foundation establishment stage skilled workers from the mysterious Sky Mansion at a high price, which greatly enriched their strength. Of course, the most important thing was that vice-sect leader Yi Chuchen and the team he led, without exception, personally entered the scene and did the most tiring and difficult work. Moreover, they constantly boosted the team's morale and excavated miraculous work efficiency. The other vice-sect leader, Taoist Ming Yun, was also not at ease. In these 3 days he brought his own team of thugs to open the mountain and dig the river, releasing his crazy desire to destroy. And Wang Lu closely followed this group of people, leaving his own footprints on every trace of destruction. 3 days later, Wang Lu dismissed all the followers, walked alone into the new city in the mountain, and stood on the high altar that was built for him. On top of his head, Lu Xian indifferently looked at everything that Wang Lu had. "Are you ready?" Wang Lu was silent for a moment, opened his eyes and then slowly opened his mouth. However, before his voice could come out, the mountains roared, the wind and clouds changed color, thousands of miles of clear sky instantly turned as dark as ink, day and night reversed, and a purple-blue lightning fell from the sky. It was like a heavenly tribulation had arrived. Wang Lu actually made the first move to gain the upper hand. Chapter 123. Good Guts. In the face of this world-changing scene, Lu Xian just blandly said these 3 words, not even bothering to lift his eyelids. The next moment, the purple-blue lightning snake roared and pounced, but when it was 10 meters away from Lucien's body, it collapsed with a loud bang without making any sound. At this time, Wisdom Sect's vice-sect leader Yi Chuchen, who was watching this fight from afar, involuntarily sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Although the purple-blue lightning that Wang Lu attracted was not a divine tribulation, its power could not be underestimated. Although Wang Lu himself was only a qi cultivating stage cultivator, the one who attracted the lightning just now was not Wang Lu himself, but rather Wang Lu, who connected the entire new city through the altar under his feet, and then used the new city to drive the surrounding spiritual energy along the feng shui line, which suddenly erupted with energy. The power contained in that purple-blue lightning was enough to turn Yi Chuchen into a puff of smoke 10 times. In front of that lightning, a Shudan stage cultivator was as fragile as a mortal. According to Yi Chuchen's conjecture, this strike was so fierce, and Wang Lu launched it in a silent and unexpected manner. Even if the opponent was a Yuanying stage cultivator, he would still be flustered, right? However, in fact, Lucien didn't even need to lift a finger. Just by relying on his natural breathing of the surrounding spiritual energy, he was able to disintegrate the lightning. Although it was the same breathing of the surrounding spiritual energy, a Yuanying stage cultivator was far beyond the imagination of a Shudan stage cultivator. When a cultivator reached the Yuanying stage, they would no longer be restricted by the amount of spiritual energy they breathed, because the magical power in their jade mansion was self-generated and endless. What cultivators cared more about was the quality of the breathing, which emphasized the fine control of the spiritual energy. For Lucien, the 10 meters of space around him was almost an absolute domain, completely under his control. Although the purple-blue lightning was powerful, it was, after all, Wang Lu's trick. Without the condensation of primordial spirit, for Lucien, it was just an ownerless scattered spiritual energy, which could be disintegrated in a single breath. However, for Wang Lu's audacity to gain the upper hand by a show of strength, Lucien secretly nodded. To be able to maintain the desire to fight back in adversity or even desperate situation was not only a matter of courage, but also the key to turning defeat into victory. Wang Lu, this child's temperament was really fierce. Moreover, although that purple-blue lightning could not threaten him, it was a miracle that he could receive it with his qi cultivating stage, even if it was built with the support of a new city. After the lightning dissipated, Lucien was not even in a hurry to make his move. Instead, he looked at Wang Lu with an appreciative gaze. However, this time, it was Wang Lu's turn to be indifferent. Since the first move was ineffective, he immediately followed up with the next move. This time, Wang Lu's action was even bigger. His 10 fingers pointed at the 10 pillars on the altar and moved back and forth, up and down. These 10 pillars were the center of the entire new city. Under the command of Wang Lu, they drove the entire new city to make a rumbling sound. Hundreds of buildings in the city began to change their positions, looking for their own position in the grand picture formed by the combination of the Spirit Gathering Array and the Elemental Convergence Array. At the same time, the sky that turned dark after receiving the purple-blue lightning suddenly lit up. It was not that the night had dissipated, but that countless stars were lit up in the night, bright like a galaxy. In the distance, Yi Chuchen once again exclaimed. That was his stellar glint. In the hands of Wang Lu, relying on the power of the new city and the feng shui line, it unexpectedly evolved into a galaxy. The next moment the galaxy fell. With a wave of his hand, Wang Lu plucked hundreds and thousands of stellar glints, which formed a dazzling meteor shower that bombarded Lucien. The corner of Lucien's mouth slightly curled up. The power of the falling galaxy might not be much stronger than the purple-green thunder earlier, but it was undoubtedly more powerful. Even with the help of the Dharma Array, ordinary qi cultivators would never be able to control such a grand scene. Of course, the disciples of the Lingjian school were doomed to not be compared with the common cultivators. However, Wang Lu's non-phase method was well known for its weak offense but strong defense. It was not easy for him to have such a scene, although it seemed like he was deliberately showing off. Unfortunately, although the scene that Wang Lu painstakingly created was gorgeous and extraordinary, it had no practical significance. Lucien still did not move a finger. Just by using his Yuanying to breathe out the spiritual energy, the galaxy melted and the curtain of night receded. After this move, Lucien finally moved. Okay, I've seen enough. Take this sword. The next moment, an invisible sword penetrated the dozens of layers of defense that Wang Lu carefully arranged and gently touched Wang Lu's forehead. It was Lucien's Sword of Truth. The essence of the Sword of Truth was the sword of primordial spirit. When it was launched, Lucien only needed to circulate his primordial spirit, and there would not be any fluctuation of magical power. In terms of being silent, it was even more difficult to guard against than Wang Lu's purple-blue lightning. Although Wang Lu and the Wisdom Sect's elders had spent a lot of effort, in the end they could not figure out the means of a Yuanying stage cultivator. In front of Lu Xian, the defensive line that they arranged was vulnerable. The Sword of Truth contained a trace of Lu Xian's misty immortal heart. Although it was only a trace for Wang Lu, it was like a big river, menacing. Wang Lu only felt that his primordial spirit was shaken, and then it was swallowed by the Sword of Truth's torrential sword intent. His primordial spirit could only see darkness. Bang! Just at this time, a dull breaking sound awakened Wang Lu from the darkness. He saw that one of the 10 pillars on the altar had been broken, and at the same time, a corner of the entire new city was also broken. More than 39th rank arrays disappeared from the ground, and together, they detonated a shattering bell sound that resounded throughout the primordial spirit of his inner mansion. Such a painful loss only awakened Wang Lu from his absent-mindedness for a moment. However, this short moment was enough for Wang Lu to respond. His right thumb and middle finger gently touched each other, and his non-phase heart sutra was launched. The 9 pillars rumbled, and the entire new city seemed to be shrouded in an emerald green light. Good. In the sky, Lu Xian could not help but exclaim in admiration. The level of Wang Lu's array arrangement was not high, but the hundreds of arrays were interlocked, reflecting an extremely solid foundation of array skills. Only on this point, among the disciples who came to this experiential learning, there were only a few people who could be compared to him. However, among those disciples who specialized in array skills, no one could have the ability to grasp the timing and layout as accurately as Wang Lu. The shattering bell had long been prepared. As long as Wang Lu was absent-minded, it would automatically activate. Obviously, he had already expected that he could not block the sharp sword intent of the Sword of Truth. This kid was self-aware. And the layer of emerald green light behind was the awakening spirit light. Wherever the light shrouded, it could make people excited and stay awake all night. Wang Lu wrapped himself in this light in order to prevent himself from fainting under the interrogation of the Sword of Truth. His response was also appropriate. What was more rare was that it only needed a gesture to activate, which was really rare and valuable for a disciple of the 6th level of Qi cultivating stage. At this point, how could Lu Xian not see Wang Lu's plan? These 3 days of arrangement fully demonstrated the amazing organizational mobilization power of the Wisdom Sect. How could a highly disciplined organization be compared to a secular cult? Although during the construction of the new city, because too many people launched the heaven-burning blood technique, the entire valley was filled with the smell of blood, but the vigorous fighting spirit showed the difference between the Wisdom Sect and the other cults. Then Wang Lu personally went into battle. With a flash of lightning and a shower of stars, of course he was not overestimating himself by trying to shake a Yuanying stage elder, but rather he was showing off his amazing fine control and timing ability. These were not reflected in his cultivation level, but in actual combat they were very crucial skills. This was a display of his gains in the past 8 months of experiential learning. And Lu Xian also admitted that, based on these points alone, Wang Lu was already a first-class figure among this group of disciples. At least, he was not a waste who was addicted to the temptation of money and power. This was Wang Lu's self-proof of innocence. It's indeed not bad. Lu Xian softly sighed in the air. At this time he recalled that 3 days ago in the inn's guest room, Wang Lu's provocative words made the anger in his heart dissipate a lot. As a reward-giver elder, he always somewhat favored the outstanding disciple, and this child indeed had the capital to be arrogant. It's just that, there's always someone better and there's always someone better. As a successor disciple of the Lingjian school, just this step was far from enough. Compared to the other 2 successor disciples, it was still far from enough. Let alone the test of the Sword of Truth had just begun. Just now, the sword intent that made Wang Lu faint was just the outer shell of the Sword of Truth. The real core, which was the power from the misty immortal heart, was still hidden behind it. Right now, Wang Lu, who was in the awakening spirit light, was facing the power of the Sword of Truth. In a trance, the new city and the valley dissipated like clouds and mist, replaced by a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Wang Lu stood on the mountain of corpses of an unknown number of people, surrounded by a chilly wind and the wailing of ghosts. Wang Lu didn't need to think to know that this was an illusion created by the Sword of Truth. The real test began here, and under the Sword of Truth, the possibility of him passing the test was really not high. To be honest, with the previous round of performances, he had already proven his strength. Even if he gave up now, it didn't matter if the defense of his heart was broken by the Sword of Truth. It was originally an impossible task, and not being able to complete it was not a sin. Uncle Lucien loved talents the most. Most likely he would just reprimand him, but how could Wang Lu's plan be so simple? It was just the sword of truth, let's face it head on. Therefore Wang Lu let the chilly wind howl. The mountain of corpses under his feet trembled, and one by one, the resurrected corpses struggled to drill out from the fortress of blood and bones. They covered the whole mountain and slowly approached the mountain where Wang Lu was. Such a terrifying scene was directly projected into the primordial spirit, which was enough to make most cultivators with weak minds lose their wits. However, how could Wang Lu show the slightest bit of fear? Instead, the corner of his mouth hooked up into a sneer. He crossed his arms and waited for the approaching corpses. After a few breaths, the nearest corpse had already arrived in front of Wang Lu. Its fleshy skull swayed left and right, and from its mouth, it spat out vague syllables. Sect. Leader, Wang Lu. Wang Lu snorted and then said with a smile, "Don't deliberately mystify me, I know what you want to say. You want me, the sect leader, to pay with my life for the death of the wisdom sect, right?" As soon as his voice fell, his smile suddenly converged and turned into a frosty expression. "Pay your mother, go eat shit." After he finished speaking, he extended his hand and pressed it on the nearest skeleton. Then he pushed it down the mountain. The corpse rolled on the ground, and halfway down the mountain, it was broken into pieces of flesh and blood residue. Wang Lu's brutality immediately angered the corpses. Tens of thousands of corpses clamored, which made the gloomy atmosphere in the surrounding area even more intense. The illusion of the sword of truth was not afraid of being broken by violence, because once the tested person resorted to violence to solve the problem, most of the time the person's heart was already weak. And the strength of the illusion of the sword of truth was precisely dependent on the opponent's heart. Once the opponent had a weak heart, then in the illusion, how could the opponent not be created? Even if the opponent was a fierce Deshang stage cultivator, the sword of truth could still project 17 or 18 true immortals to tear the opponent into pieces. However, behind Wang Lu's violence, there was a firm and incomprehensible self-confidence. "Dregs, what qualifications do you have to roar in front of me?" This vigorous roar was like a rolling thunder that rolled down from the top of the mountain, causing the clamor of the corpses to stop. Without waiting for them to move again, Wang Lu raised his sword-like eyebrows and pointed his finger forward. "You are the defeated who died in the Wisdom Sect's expansion war. Your resentment is monstrous and you blame the pain of your death on me, wishing that you could cut me into pieces. But I, not evading nor escaping, gladly accepted this killing sin, bearing your resentment. Because the enemy's pain is my happiness, and the enemy's complaint is my heavenly music. Since I stand on the opposing side, I have a clear conscience regarding your killing." With that, his finger changed direction. "And you are the Wisdom Sect's warriors who died in the Wisdom Sect's expansion war. You have remorse in your heart, fantasizing that if you didn't join the Wisdom Sect, if you didn't stand on the front line, you could drag out an ignoble existence. Therefore, you blame the resentment of your death on me. Toward you, I calmly treat you with contempt. Because there are 10 times, 100 times more martyrs than you, who have no complaints or regrets for the sect's ideals. Compared to them, you are as light as dust. But a real warrior should leave their resentment to the enemy, should always fix their eyes on the front. After death, they should gather their former subordinates and return to the human world from hell. When you give up your resentment toward the enemy and turn it into remorse, you are not worthy to be a warrior, not worthy to enjoy the glory of the Wisdom Sect. I disdain the death of the fallen. As for you, you are the cultivators who died prematurely under the heaven-burning blood technique. You think that you have been deceived, that your grievances are like the flying snow in June, that I have ruined your long life. Toward you, I only have indifference and contempt. Because it is me who gave you the opportunity to touch the immortal path, it is me who gave you, these mortals, the possibility to go one step further. It is me who let you sublimate from being destined to die silently, becoming the founder of the sublimation of the 9 regions. Let alone the heaven-burning blood technique has never been forcibly promoted. Whether you are a mediocre person or a dazzling hero, even if it is only for a moment, the decision is in your hands. You have chosen to shine, so you don't have the qualification to regret the price of shining. Today's clamor will only make you ungrateful, so your death is not to be regretted." A series of roars deterred the millions of corpses. At this moment, Wang Lu's imposing manner reached its peak. Even this hell-like mountain of corpses and sea of blood couldn't stop his panicky eloquence. The millions of corpses actually didn't move forward, and the cold wind from hell also weakened a lot. Behind the blood clouds in the sky, there was a golden light, as if at any time the clouds would break the sky and the sun would shine. Interesting. At the same time, Lu Xian, who was watching all of this, smiled and nodded. Interesting? I think it's all sophistry. Fang He disapproved of this. Lu Xian said, although he is twisting words and forcing logic, he is not simply showing off his eloquence. To be able to say such a thing in front of the Sword of Truth, it can be seen that deep in his heart he also thinks so. Even if he faces a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, his conscience is clear. Fang He shook his head. This kind of clear conscience can only show the distortion of his heart. Lu Xian said, Junior brother, you're using the standard of ordinary people to judge him. Don't forget, this child is also the leader of a sect. As the saying goes, the merciful cannot command an army. If he doesn't have such a distorted state of mind, how can he run a sect? Or rather, in the 9 regions, which successful leader doesn't have a bit of paranoia and distortion? Fang He just shook his head but didn't argue with Lu Xian. Lu Xian said, rest assured, you don't know that the power of the Sword of Truth is far more than this. This child Wang Lu can only be a bit unyielding in the first test, but in the next test he won't be able to withstand it. This was also a matter of course. If the Sword of Truth could only rely on the toughness of his heart, it wouldn't have the effect of proving his innocence. Because even if a person indiscriminately killed innocent people, as long as he firmly believed that his indiscriminate killing was reasonable, he could still pass this test. It's just that he might not have the courage to roar like Wang Lu did. A person's clear conscience was not the same as being shameless, because the Sword of Truth was not asking about a person's 7 orifices exquisite heart, but the Tao heart. The so-called Tao heart was the perception and understanding of the immortal path during the immortal cultivation. Although the immortal path could be divided into 3,000 great Taos, each one had its bottom line and foundation. If one wanted to follow these Taos, one must accept the rules of the boundless world. One could not use one's own ideas to cover the rules of the boundless world, and one could not use the deformed 3 views to understand the great Tao. Thus, it was impossible to be a righteous and shameless person, unless one cultivated the devil cultivation method, or if one's primordial spirit had been cultivated to a pure and untainted state, then it was another matter. Wang Lu did not cultivate the devil cultivation method, and his primordial spirit was far from being pure and untainted. Therefore, when the power of the Sword of Truth was truly revealed, that strong coercion suddenly couldn't be maintained. In the illusion, the mountain of corpses, the sea of blood, and the tens of thousands of corpses all disappeared, leaving only the boundless darkness. After an unknown period of time, when Wang Lu's consciousness began to blur in the boundless darkness, a voice blasted out, "You're guilty, boss." Wang Lu was almost scared out of his wits on the spot. When these 3 words rang, thousands of pictures poured into his mind. He saw the cultivators groaning under the wisdom sect's expansion knife, saw the civilians who suddenly died on the spot due to the excessive cultivation of the heaven-burning blood technique, and also saw the wisdom sect's workers who worked day and night and died prematurely, as well as the relatives who wept next to their coffins. These were all real karma. Whether you admit it or not, the blood on your hands would not be washed clean because of this. Wang Lu naturally knew the difficulty of this test, so he immediately tightened his heart's defense and resisted with all his strength. His primordial spirit cultivation was not enough, so he couldn't directly face the test of the heart's examination. Therefore at this time he used all of his means. The remaining 9 sacrificial pillars of the new city suddenly flew into the air, and correspondingly not only the new city, but also the surrounding undulating mountain range. The green mountains and clear water trembled under the light of the sacrificial pillars, and then more spiritual energy was squeezed out from the feng shui line. Along with the operation of the new city's spirit gathering array, the spiritual energy rushed toward Wang Lu like a river flowing into the sea. At this time, the spiritual energy was turbulent, several times more violent than the spiritual energy tide when he built the primal chaos altar. If it were an ordinary chi cultivating stage cultivator, they would immediately explode and die. However, in the middle of the sacrificial altar, Wang Lu was as steady as Mount Tai. All of the spiritual energy was absorbed into his body, and in an instant, the platinum rainstorm in his inner mansion set off a flood. This special magical power that was transformed from the void spirit root actually didn't have enough time to evaporate. Of course, the real protagonist was the golden liquid that was extracted from more than 200 sword bones. When the sword bones were first formed, the golden liquid that Wang Lu inhaled and exhaled was accumulated bit by bit. Now, it was as if 206 floodgates had been opened, forming a golden ocean in his inner mansion. At the same time, the primordial spirit in his inner mansion that was wrapped in darkness began to rotate crazily, like the eye of the sea stirring the entire ocean. After a moment, the primordial spirit shone brightly. It actually forced back the darkness. Good. At this moment, Lu Xian and Fang He cheered in unison. It was not for Wang Lu's huge array that was used to absorb spiritual energy, nor was it for the miraculous elixir that was used to strengthen the sword bones. Instead, it was for the last step, the technique of using magical power to strengthen the primordial spirit. For cultivators, magical power and primordial spirit were two independent things. The primordial spirit controlled the magical power, and the magical power nourished the primordial spirit. However, the two could not be changed at will unless, like Wang Lu, using a brilliant mental cultivation method. Mental cultivation method was the transformation of the mind and the method. For example, Lu Xian, Fang He, and other Yuaning stage-old monsters, they naturally knew this technique. However, Wang Lu had only been cultivating for 3 years, and his cultivation was only at the 6th level of the qi cultivating stage, yet he was able to use the mental cultivation method to transform it. It was simply a miracle. Fifth junior sister's new version of the non-phase mental cultivation method has improved again. After a moment, Lu Xian sighed with emotion. But the main thing is that Wang Lu, this child, is formidable. To be able to achieve this step, this sort of truth, Fang He coldly snorted. He still can't block it. After all, his cultivation is still too shallow. Lu Xian pondered for a moment. It's not that there's no chance. At least there's a 1 in 10,000 chance. Unless he's willing to go all out, there's not even a 1 in 10,000 chance. However, as long as he's not an idiot, there's no need for him to go all out for the sword of truth. To be able to reach this step, who would be too harsh on him? He should be clear in his heart that he won't persist to the end. Lu Xian smiled and shook his head. Junior brother, do you also have a fondness for talent? Fang He turned his head. This kind of crooked talent, forget it. If he can be like your family's little Lu Li, it's not bad. Lu Xian's smile suddenly became a bit bitter. If little Lu Li can have a little bit of Wang Lu's cleverness, I'll be satisfied. The two elders chatted for a while and didn't have any more expectations for the next outcome. However, at this time, in the face of the most severe test of the sword of truth, in the deepest darkness, Wang Lu's primordial spirit unexpectedly went tit for tat and didn't retreat even half a step. Lu Xian was extremely surprised. He's going all out. Fang He frowned. What's he thinking? However, no matter what Wang Lu was thinking at this time, there was no doubt that he had chosen a dead end. The sword of truth was not a sword that could injure people. Even if the heart's defense was broken, it would only be a defeat without injury, and there was no danger. However, Wang Lu had overloaded his mental cultivation method, and the damage to his body, inner mansion, and primordial spirit would be fatal. And the chance of him successfully resisting the sword of truth was at most 1 in 10,000. Whether it was Lu Xian or Fang He, they didn't expect that Wang Lu's temperament would become so unyielding after 8 months of leaving the mountain. In order to prove his innocence, he didn't even care about his life? At this time, without any extra thoughts, Lu Xian only froze for a moment, then he turned his primordial spirit upside down, and the darkness around Wang Lu's primordial spirit immediately dissipated. The last half of the sword of truth was taken back by Lu Xian. Suddenly losing the oppression, Wang Lu was also shocked. He immediately dispersed his spiritual power and stopped circulating his mental cultivation method. However, his whole body was physically and mentally injured and he was extremely tired. Standing on the altar, Wang Lu couldn't even maintain his standing posture. He was tottering, but the smile on his face was still so confident and calm. Uncle, disciple, has a clear conscience. Chapter 124. When he talked to Lu Xian and Fang He again, it was already half a day later. Although Lu Xian finally withdrew the sword of truth and did not let Wang Lu die needlessly, but the overloading of the non-phase heart sutra still caused his primordial spirit to be overdrawn and he suffered some minor injuries. The two elders naturally would not sit back and watch. They quickly healed Wang Lu's injuries, but the overdrawn primordial spirit still needed some time to recuperate. After half a day, although Wang Lu was weak, he regained consciousness. When he saw Lu Xian and Fang he smiled. Uncle, disciple has a clear conscience. Lu Xian smiled bitterly. I know you have a clear conscience. You have passed my test. In fact, strictly speaking, Wang Lu did not succeed in proving himself with the sword of truth. In fact, the last test could not be passed. It was Lucien who took the initiative to withdraw the last and most severe test, not letting him experience the test of certain failure. But from another point of view, since it was Lucien who withdrew it, it could not be said that Wang Lu lost. Therefore, the second elder simply considered him to have passed. "Thank you, uncle." Wang Lu nodded to express his gratitude and then asked, "I don't know if disciples' cultivation level is worthy of uncle's painstaking arrangement for this experiential learning?" Hearing this overbearing question, Lucien did not get angry. Instead, he calmly replied, "Compared to the disciples of the same batch, whether it's the speed of improvement or the current strength, you've already far surpassed them." After listening to this, Wang Lu immediately caught the point: the disciples of the same batch. As one of the rare true disciples of Lingjian school, although Wang Lu's cultivation progress had fallen behind in the past 2 years because of his pain in the ass spiritual root attribute, his goal had always been to become an inner disciple like Zhu Qin and Wen Bao. The opponent of a successor disciple must also be a successor disciple. This time, there were 3 successor disciples who went down the mountain to gain experience. Besides him, the other 2 successor disciples were Wang Lu's targets. However, they had entered the mountain earlier than Wang Lu and were not in the same group. The meaning behind Lucien's words was very clear. Compared to the other 2 true disciples, you don't have any advantage. This truly surprised Wang Lu. Indeed, because he had been managing the sect for the past 8 months, he had not been able to spend all his time and energy on increasing his cultivation. However, the various experiences he had as a sect master allowed him to experience a rare state of mind that other disciples would never be able to experience. It was extremely beneficial to his soul. In the past 8 months, his cultivation had only increased by 1 stage, which was indeed not too outstanding. That was because his greatest gain was the condensation of his primordial spirit. In addition, the many battles during the expansion of the Wisdom sect also made Wang Lu's actual combat ability advance by leaps and bounds. Even his non-phase method, which he was not good at, could now be displayed with the help of the array. In terms of comprehensive strength, compared to before he went down the mountain, his strength had skyrocketed several times. However, this kind of progress was actually not enough to surpass the other 2 successor disciples. This competition pressure was a bit big. Fortunately, he still had a sect with more than 1 million followers as the result of his experiential learning. Adding this, it was estimated that no other disciple would be able to catch up to him. "Wang Lu, don't be happy too early." Lucien sighed, "Although I've passed this test, this is not the main point." Wang Lu of course knew that from the beginning to the end, Elder Fang He was the key figure. Therefore, Wang Lu very seriously looked at Fang He, waiting for him to speak. This outspoken elder looked at the still pale and weak Wang Lu, and he could not help but shake his head and sigh. "I know what you want to say. The Wisdom sect's matter was written in Zhu Qin's report. When Bao said it, and me and senior brother Lucien also witnessed it with our own eyes. It indeed has its merits, but to say it's a cult is indeed a bit biased." Wang Lu slightly released a smile. "However, this doesn't mean that it's open and aboveboard. Strictly speaking, your Wisdom sect still belongs to the category of a cult." Wang Lu immediately said, "But we've already obtained the official certification of the Great Ming country." Fang He snappily glared at him. Previously, the Thousand Spirit sect was the White Moon country's national religion, so how could it not be a cult? Mortal World certification. You actually have the nerve to take it seriously. Our Wisdom sect is rooted in the grassroots, serving the grassroots, so naturally the voice from the grassroots is the most important. As the saying goes, reputation is not as good as gold or silver cup. Silly. The bigger and faster you develop in the mortal world, the more you can't wash it clean and you can't explain it clearly, because with the means of a cultivator, playing with mortals is too easy. Not to mention you have millions of believers. When the Devil sect was rampant, the Devil sect leader only needed to issue an order, and hundreds of millions of people would risk their lives for him. Don't tell me it's not a Devil sect but a righteous sect? And compared to the Devil sect, your scale is simply not worth mentioning. Therefore, the saying that the immortal path and the mortal path are different means that cultivators and mortals must draw a clear line. The immortal cultivation sect can't be too involved in the mortal world, especially can't directly take in mortals as believers. Your millions of believers are actually Achilles' heel. Elder Fang He changed his usual iron-faced fiend appearance and said in a rare earnest and well-intentioned manner, "I know you have a lot of reasons and excuses, but whether it's the heaven-burning blood technique or your millions of believers, they're all problems that can't be avoided. They're a stain that can't be washed clean. Indeed, our Lingjian school doesn't prohibit the disciples from setting up a sect at the foot of the mountain. Although with your qualifications setting up a sect is already suspected of violating the rules. But in any case, the sect that doesn't conform to the rules should be banned as a cult, which is a matter of course. Wang Lu asked with a smile, which sect's rule doesn't conform to? The Lingjian school's rule as well as the Wanxian League's rule, are all like that. Wang Lu thought for a moment and then said, if uncle is willing to cover for me, I think the Wanxian League wouldn't be able to detect it, right? Moreover, the Blue River region is, after all, our Lingjian school's territory, so even if there's a violation, it's easy to fool them. Strictly speaking, the Xingjing sect actually has a lot of violations, but I haven't seen anyone pursue it. Fang He's eyebrows raised. Nonsense. Didn't you listen to what I just said to you? Wang Lu asked again, is there no room for accommodation? Uncle, you've also seen it, no matter from which point of view, the development of the wisdom sect has more advantages than disadvantages, so why let the rigid rules imprison it? Fang He shook his head. That's the rule, it can't be changed. If I don't know about it then it's fine. But since I know I can't ignore it. I'm the sect's disciplinary elder, if I can't strictly abide by the rules, then the rules would be useless and the sect would fall apart. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was silent for a moment. Then, according to uncle's meaning, disband the sect and follow me back to the mountain to be punished by the sect's rules. Considering that you don't have the intention to do evil, nor do you seek personal gain and your experiential learning is good, according to the rules, you need to go into closed-door training on the mountain for 3 years. Upon hearing this, Lu Xian also sighed. Disbanding the sect and going into closed-door training for 3 years, this punishment was neither light nor heavy, it could be said to be impartial. Of course, in Wang Lu's opinion, it might be difficult to accept, especially the disbanding of the sect. Actually, junior brother Fang He's love for Wang Lu was very obvious, and he didn't completely deny the existence of the wisdom sect. However, when it came to the sect's rules, he would absolutely not have the slightest bit of ambiguity. Unless the sect leader changed his decision, Fang He's judgment would always be cold and ruthless. Wang Lu's 8 months of effort was indeed a pity. However, on the immortal cultivation path, there were too many pitiful things, so it was better to just treat it as a rare experience. However, at this time he heard Wang Lu say with a smile, very well, since uncle has no prejudice against my wisdom sect and is just doing things according to the rules, then it's easy. Fang He was startled. What's easy? Wang Lu asked with a smile, may I ask uncle, although the sect's rules prohibit the operation of a cult, but the sect's definition of a cult is very vague, and it lacks the relevant details, right? In terms of familiarity with the sect's rules, even a top student like Wang Lu couldn't surpass the disciplinary elder. Fang He replied with a sinking voice, indeed, but this is not the loophole. The Lingjian school's definition of a cult is consistent with the Wanxian League, and the Wanxian League's definition of a cult is very detailed. Your wisdom sect just happened to touch its many forbidden areas. In other words, because the Wanxian League has determined that the wisdom sect is a cult, the Lingjian school has also determined that the wisdom sect is a cult? Fang He frowned. He didn't understand the meaning of Wang Lu's entanglement here, but he still nodded. That's indeed the case. Just as he said that, he saw Wang Lu reveal a heartfelt happy smile. Then I'm relieved, I've been waiting for you to say that. With that, his smile converged a bit, turning into a slightly sarcastic one. The youth stretched out his index finger, placed it on his forehead, and then softly opened his mouth. Wu Feihua, it's me. At the same time, from Wang Lu's primordial spirit, a charming woman's voice came, sect leader, oh no, it's Mr. Director. Fang He was startled. Psychic precious jade? 4 Yuanying stage elders, the sound transmission between the primordial spirits of low-level cultivators simply couldn't be hidden from their perception. Therefore, the dialogue between Wang Lu and Wu Feihua could be heard by Fang He and Lu Xian. They could even see Wu Feihua's charming face from thousands of miles away. Wang Lu asked with a smile, is it done? Wu Feihua sweetly said, Mr. Director, at that time, you seriously assigned this task to me, telling me to complete it within 3 days. Of course, I'll go all out and live up to your expectations, let me see it. Okay, but how does Mr. Director plan to reward me? I'll add 2 personal secretaries to your public relations department. I'm sure they're both at the foundation establishment stage. They'll also be good-looking furnaces that can considerately comfort you day and night. What do you think? Oh, thank you, Sir Director, for your kindness. But if Sir Director is willing to personally reward me, that would be for the best. I guarantee that I will serve you comfortably and make you wish you were dead. Hee hee, if you talk nonsense again I'll remove you from your position. Wu Feihua quickly restrained her smile and honestly transmitted the image of the thing that Wang Lu wanted through the psychic precious jade. Seeing the image, Wang Lu just faintly smiled, but Fang He and Lu Xian simultaneously widened their eyes and exclaimed, "This is impossible." Something that could make the knowledgeable Yuanying stage elders lose their composure like this was naturally not an ordinary thing. In the image transmitted by the psychic jade, a golden talisman seal was quietly held in his palm. The surface of the talisman seal had a wave-like luster flowing on it. Although it was impossible to sense the special waves that this talisman seal should have, the words engraved on the talisman seal were very clear. Wisdom Sect member of the Wanxian League. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.